Chapter 6:21. Mom. Hua Jinyao's tone was soft. Qing Sang and I are not what you think. Qing Sang is not what you think either. As for Uncle, he is not what you think either. Seeing that Lu Tongjia was still angry, Hua Jinyao didn't want to explain. However, he remembered that Lu Tongjia wasn't the one who poisoned him. At that time, he was blinded by anger. Now that he looked back, there were many suspicious points. After all, no matter how much Lu Tongjia disliked him, she couldn't ignore the Hua family's reputation. Not to mention that there were so many guests and relatives there that day. She wouldn't have made a big deal out of it, and she wouldn't have allowed such a thing to happen. He was prejudiced and a little paranoid. Because of this, Hua Jinyao didn't look so angry. You have been poisoned by Su Qingsang. You are out of your mind. Lu Tongjia was very angry. She took a step forward. For the first time in so many years, she took the initiative to approach Hua Jinyao. Jinyao, I didn't stop you from doing anything you did before. If you wanted to find someone with a lower status, I wouldn't stop you. But Su Qingsang can't. She has a moral problem. Jinyao, I won't allow a person with a moral problem to be your wife and the future mistress of the Hua family. After all, not everyone could become the matriarch of the Hua family. Hua Jinyao knew that she was angry and disliked Su Qingsang. He didn't care about some things before, but now he couldn't ignore them. Mom, calm down and be objective. Hua Jinyao put his hands on Lu Tongjia's shoulders. His expression was calm. I am calm. I am calm. That's why I thought. I know how Uncle feels about Qingsang. His words interrupted Lu Tongjia. She stared at Hua Jinyao with her eyes wide open. What did you say? I know you like Qingsang. Hua Jinyao's expression was very calm. No, maybe it's not enough. It should be love. He loves Qingsang. Lu Tongjia's face turned pale. She stared at Hua Jinyao. But Qingsang doesn't know. How is that possible? Mom. Hua Jinyao had a feeling that he was back when he was a teenager. Lu Tongjia blamed him for all those things. Back then, he didn't want to explain himself, but this time he wanted to. Uncle probably didn't know Qingsang's identity when he met her. Hua Jinyao didn't know what to say. There were some things he knew, but he didn't want to ruin his relationship with Su Qingsang with suspicion. Qingsang doesn't know what you're thinking. What you saw was just an accident. Accident? That time. I will find the person who drugged him. He would not allow such a person to exist in the Hua family. It wasn't too difficult to investigate these matters. But please believe me on one point. Qingsang had absolutely no feelings for her uncle. I know they may often come across something that makes you uncomfortable. But in fact, I'm really glad that you had feelings for Su Qingsang. Hua Jinyao. How could he say something like that? Was he still a man? Lu Tongjia's face turned green. Mom, Uncle saved Qingsang's life. Hua Jinyao held her shoulder and tightened his grip. I almost lost Qingsang. Almost. The last time I went to Sea City, there was an earthquake. Qingsang was trapped under the rubble. It was her uncle who saved her. Mom, I don't care what you think of Uncle, and I don't want to care what you think of Qingsang. But I hope you understand that I'm very grateful to Uncle. From the bottom of my heart. Lu Tongjia didn't know about these things, and no one would tell her. She thought about the earthquake that killed hundreds of people, and that her son had also stayed there for many days. At that time, she was very worried about Hua Jinyao and blamed Su Qingsang in her heart. However, she didn't know that Su Qingsang had almost died. I'm jealous that the person who appeared that day wasn't me. But I'm also glad that Uncle was there that day. Otherwise, I would have lost Qingsang now. And that outcome was absolutely unacceptable to him. Mom, you didn't do it that day. I'm sorry. I misunderstood you. Lu Tongjia couldn't keep up with her thoughts. She looked at Hua Jinyao. It was the first time in so many years that she had heard her son apologize. Her lips moved. She wanted to say something, but she didn't know what to say. Her eyes suddenly turned red. Mom, I'm sorry. Hua Jinyao apologized very seriously. I shouldn't have misunderstood you. I shouldn't have spoken to you like that. Lu Tongjia's eyes were not only red, but also a little sour and hot. She felt something coming out of her eyes. Mom, let's get over what happened in the past. Okay? Chingsang is a good girl. I hope you can put aside your prejudices and seriously accept her. You'll find that she's better than you think. Lu Tongjia didn't hear the second half of the sentence. She only heard the first sentence. Jinyao? Hu Jinyao turned his face slightly. When he looked at Lu Tongjia again, his expression was a little excited. At least he wasn't as calm as he appeared. It was Lu Tongjia's birthday today. She came to look for him yesterday. On his birthday, Lu Tongjia brought a cake to his apartment. Hu Jinyao thought about it and understood some things very clearly. It would be a lie to say that there was no barrier in his heart at all and that he didn't mind at all. However, Lu Tongjia was his mother, the person who gave birth to him. Especially after seeing how haggard Qi Shiwei had made herself because of her pregnancy. He sometimes couldn't help but wonder if Lu Tongjia had also had such a hard time when she was pregnant back then. Some things were in the past. It was hard to recall the past. Even if he couldn't be as close to Lu Tongjia as a normal mother and son, he really didn't want to be like an enemy to Lu Tongjia anymore. Hu Jinyao looked at Lu Tongjia and used a very soft voice to hide the trace of helplessness in the depths of his heart. Can I? Lu Tongjia's lips trembled. She blinked her eyes, and tears flowed down her cheeks. At this moment, she couldn't care less about Su Chingsang. She just looked at Hu Jinyao in disbelief. He had scolded her viciously just now. He had clearly misunderstood her actions of taking the initiative to express goodwill several times. Now that he had put on such an attitude, Lu Tongjia couldn't accept it. For a moment, she thought that there was something wrong with her ears. Jinyao. Perhaps because she couldn't believe it, Lu Tongjia's expression changed a few times. She hastily wiped away her tears and looked at Hu Jinyao with some uncertainty. Jinyao, is what you said true? Yes, it's all true, Mom. Hu Jinyao nodded. No matter what, he was willing to repair this mother-son relationship with Lu Tongjia. Lu Tongjia stood there motionlessly. She was a little emotional. She didn't think that it would be so easy to repair their mother-son relationship with Hu Jinyao. But at least this was a beginning. The great joy made her speechless. One moment, she was a little surprised, and the next moment, she was a little regretful. Would he be angry at her for treating him like that before? Her emotions were complicated. At this moment, she couldn't care less about Su Chingsang. She was only thinking about what Hu Jinyao had said. He was willing to repair their relationship again. He was willing to start all over again. Although it was ridiculous to say that, after all, they were mother and son. But she was really excited, inexplicably excited. Her shoulders were slightly shaking. She lowered her head and couldn't find her voice. Hu Jinyao looked at her. He really didn't know that Lu Tongjia cared about him so much. Inexplicably, he felt a little sad. But he didn't say a word. Although the temperature outside was getting better, it was getting late. Hu Jinyao looked in the direction of the main house. Mom, let's go in. Lu Tongjia nodded. Seeing that Hu Jinyao was about to leave, she suddenly pulled his sleeve. Jinyao? Mom? Did you mean what you said just now? She asked a little nervously and didn't know what to do. Yes. He meant it. He also wanted to divert Lu Tongjia's attention. He wanted her to stop staring at Su Chingsang. Lu Tongjia smiled again and wiped the tears on her face. Good, very good, very good. The words good were enough to explain Lu Tongjia's current mood. When they walked to the door of the greenhouse, Lu Tongjia suddenly stopped. Jinyao, I'm sorry. Hu Jinyao was stunned by her sudden apology. He turned his head and looked at her in confusion. I'm sorry, Lu Tongjia said again. She lowered her head and seemed to be a little embarrassed. I really wasn't a good mother. Jinyao. It was difficult to admit that she was wrong. Although Lu Tongjia wanted to reconcile with Hu Jinyao, she had made too many mistakes in the past 10 years. She was actually worried that Hu Jinyao wouldn't forgive her. Mom, it's okay. It's all in the past. He had grown up. He was no longer the boy who had nightmares at night and wanted his mother to comfort him. He was not the kind of person who would go against the heavens and the earth just because of a moment of anger and make everyone unhappy. Since it was all in the past, he would let it go. Jean Yao? Mom, it's all in the past. Then let it go. Don't even think about it. Lu Tongjia's heart was in turmoil. She had a lot to say, but she couldn't say a word. Hua Jinyao walked outside and took the initiative to stand with Lu Tongjia. The main house was brightly lit. Hua Jinyao walked very slowly, taking care of Lu Tongjia's emotions. Mom, go ahead. Qing Sang is the person I chose. I know you have some prejudices against her, but she's really a very good woman. She's not what you think, so don't target her in the future. But Uncle saved her life, and he's a relative of the Hua family. It's impossible for the two of them not to see each other in the future. I've already told Uncle about this. What happened before was an accident. Don't take it to heart. Accident. Lu Tongjia still felt wronged for her son. Do you know that they went to buy gifts together today? Lu Tongjia looked at Hua Jinyao with heartache in her eyes. Jinyao, I don't hate her. I just feel sorry for you. You protect her wholeheartedly, but she has ulterior motives. Do you know that Mom, Hua Jinyao had a headache. Wan Xianyang and Uncle know each other. It's normal for Uncle and Qing Sang to run into each other in his shop. Can't you think so much? Yes, it's normal to run into each other in Wan Xianyang's shop. Is it normal to run into each other in our house? Lu Tongjia was so angry that she almost lost control. Her voice was a little louder than before. Mom, of course it's normal for Qing Sang to go to Wan Xianyang's shop to buy gifts for you. As for coming to our house, Grandpa is Uncle's uncle. It's normal for him to visit Grandpa. You're not going to blame Qing Sang for Uncle's visit every time he comes. Are you? Hua Jinyao didn't hear Qing Sang talk about buying gifts, but he could roughly guess. It would be ridiculous to think that Su Qing Sang and Zhang Yichen met each other because of a romantic relationship. He wasn't a person who couldn't tell right from wrong. But, Mom, Qing Sang doesn't know about Uncle's feelings. She only sees him as an elder and a relative. If you continue like this, Qing Sang might really find out. You have to know that Uncle saved Qing Sang's life. If Qing Sang finds out about Uncle's feelings, what will she do? Hua Jinyao's life, except for the disaster that happened to him when he was young, had been pretty much anything he wanted. However, he wasn't blindly arrogant. There was always someone better than him. There were people more powerful than him. He admitted that Zhang Yichen was one of the people who was stronger than him. Even if Zhang Yichen wasn't his rival in love or his uncle, Hua Jinyao still admired him. He had an indescribable appreciation for Zhang Yichen. He was honest and upright. Even if he liked Qing Sang, he didn't do anything. His relationship with Zhang Yichen couldn't go back to how it used to be. But he didn't want to become enemies with him like this. More importantly, he didn't want Qing Sang to feel embarrassed when she found out. She would feel uncomfortable when she was with Zhang Yichen in the future. It would be best to treat him as a relative and uncle. Lu Tongjia had a complicated expression on her face. She didn't like Qing Sang, but Hua Jinyao's words seemed to make sense. If Qing Sang didn't mean it, she kept saying it. Maybe Hua Jinyao was interested in her even if she didn't mean it. But, no buts. Mom, I trust Qing Sang's character and Uncle's character. I trust Uncle more. If you want, you can do what you did in the past and in the future. Lu Tongjia finally stopped talking. The two of them walked to the gate and happened to meet Zhang Yichen, who was walking out. Cousin-in-law Jinyao. Uncle. Hua Jinyao greeted Zhang Yichen very calmly. Are you leaving? It's so late. You can leave tomorrow. No need. Zhang Yichen glanced at Hua Jinyao and shook his head. I have a mission in the army. I haven't seen you for a long time, so I came to see you. Okay. But it's so late. Be careful on the road, Uncle. I know. Thank you. Zhang Yichen bowed, said goodbye to Lu Tongjia, and then left. He got into the car. After starting the car, Zhang Yichen glanced at the Hua family's gate again. His eyes were gloomy. He thought of Su Qing Sang, who came in from the garden, when he sent old Master Hua back to his room. She stood at the corner of the stairs and saw him coming downstairs. She called him, Uncle. Zhang Yichen stopped and looked at Su Qing Sang, not knowing why she called him. Uncle, I haven't thanked you for what happened in Sea City last time. Zhang Yichen frowned, and his expression was a little cold. You already thanked me at the hospital. That's different. Su Qingsong's eyes were clear, and there was a hidden meaning in them. It's not enough to thank you for saving my life. Zhang Yichen's expression became more and more serious, but Su Qingsang suddenly smiled. Uncle, I know what you're capable of, and I'm afraid that with your status you won't need me. But I still have to say, if you need me in the future, don't hesitate to ask. I'll do my best. Even if I can't do it, Jin Yao will help me. After all, you're Jin Yao's uncle, and I'm Jin Yao's wife. That will never change. Zhang Yichen looked at her face and seemed to understand. Su Qingsang turned her body to the side. Uncle, you're not an ordinary person, so you should have a lot of work to do. I won't see you out. Take care, uncle. He understood at that moment that she must have known. She knew what he was thinking, and she also knew the deepest secret in his heart. Yes, she was such a smart woman. Even if he tried to restrain himself, how could she not see it? He didn't expect that she would directly ask him to leave after she found out. She would reveal that kind of information again. At that moment, he was really crazy with jealousy. He was jealous of Hua Jinyao. Thinking of the tone of her last sentence, he suddenly smiled. Forget it. He had made 2 great contributions this time, and the higher-ups couldn't reward him anymore. After all, he was not old enough. If he continued to rise, it would be too fast. The higher-ups wanted him to go to the southwest to train the newly established secret force. Since that was the case, he would accept the task. He would have to stay there for at least 2 or 3 years. In another 2 or 3 years, he might forget about these thoughts. Zhang Yichen took a deep look at the old house of the Hua family, then started the car and left. This time, he wouldn't come back for a while. When Hua Jinyao returned to his room, Su Qingsang had just finished the video call with Li Qianxue. As soon as she went upstairs, she received a video call from Li Qianxue. Li Qianxue really cared about her. Today was Lu Tongjia's birthday. She was always worried that if the gift wasn't to Lu Tongjia's liking, she would make things difficult for her poor daughter again. Su Qingsang had to repeatedly say that Lu Tongjia liked the bracelet very much. Although it wasn't a big party, the atmosphere was good, so she didn't have to worry. Who are you talking to? She seemed to have heard her talking before she entered the room. She came in and saw her lying on the bed with her phone in her hand, which confirmed her guess. What do you think? Mother-in-law. Smart. Su Qingsang sat up. My mother knew it was your mother's birthday, so she was very nervous. She was afraid that I didn't give her a good gift and made your mother unhappy. In fact, Lu Tongjia was indeed unhappy. Thinking of this, Su Qingsang felt a little embarrassed. She had wanted to repair the relationship between Hua Jinyao and Lu Tongjia, but she didn't expect that not only would it not be repaired, but it would also make Lu Tongjia so angry at her. I didn't expect that my flattery would backfire. I made your mother completely angry. That's not true. My mother is quite happy. Hua Jinyao walked to her side and sat down, but his words made Su Qingsang laugh. She turned her face to look at Hua Jinyao, with a bit of sarcasm in her eyes. Hua Jinyao, you're quite good at lying through your teeth, aren't you? What do you mean by lying through my teeth? Your mother is forcing me to divorce you, but I'm not going to marry you. Why is she still happy? Judging from Lu Tongjia's attitude just now, not to mention divorce her, she would even eat her heart raw. She asked you to divorce her, so you divorced her? Didn't you agree? It doesn't matter whether I agree or not. The important thing is whether you agree or not. As Su Qingsang said this, she straightened up and held Hua Jinyao's face with both hands. Her expression changed to a serious one. Or, you've already promised your mother to divorce me, so your mother is happy? Hua Jinyao's reaction was to pull her hand down, put it to his lips, and bite it. Nonsense again. Su Qingsang pulled her hand back with force. She glared at Hua Jinyao and said, If I'm not talking nonsense, then please tell me, young Master Hua, what do you plan to do with me now? Hua Jinyao grabbed her hand again and held it in his arms. He leaned forward and kissed her on the lips. What do I plan to do with you? Hold hands for the rest of our lives and grow old together. What do you think? He said it in a joking tone, but he sounded very serious. Su Qingsang looked at him, and her heart skipped a beat. However, thinking of Hua Jinyao's attitude just now, she didn't believe him. You want to spend the rest of your life with me? Will your mother agree? She was convinced by me. Hua Jinyao's words made Su Qingsang's eyes widen. She couldn't believe it. How did you convince her? She had always felt that making Lu Tongjia accept her was as difficult as climbing the Himalayas. Yes. Are you going to tell me or not? Su Qingsang couldn't help but pinch her waist. She was still trying to keep her in suspense. I'll tell you if you kiss me. Su Qingsang rolled her eyes at him, leaned over, and kissed him on the lips. Hua Jinyao wasn't satisfied. He held her waist and deepened the kiss until Su Qingsang was out of breath. He didn't let her go until she was out of breath. I'll tell my mother. I'll tell her that you're the only wife I plan to marry in my life. If she insists on divorcing me, I won't marry anyone else in the future. I'll stay single until I'm old. If she's willing, I don't care. Why was this man so flippant? Su Qingsang looked at the expression on his face. She should have been moved, but she wanted to laugh at his flippant attitude. Will your mother agree if you say that? What else? Hua Jinyao looked at her and smiled. She can't really let me stay single forever. Can she? Then our branch will have no descendants. Su Qingsang patted Hua Jinyao's shoulder hard. However, she reached out to hold his waist and rubbed her face against his chest. Your mother won't object to it anymore, will she? If I'm not wrong, she probably won't. Su Qingsang was relieved. In fact, she wasn't afraid that Lu Tongjia would object. However, if the mother-in-law and daughter-in-law didn't get along and were always on opposite sides, she would feel very embarrassed. More importantly, Hua Jinyao felt that way. It wasn't that he didn't love Lu Tongjia anymore, and she didn't want to face Lu Tongjia's sarcasm every time she returned to the Hua family. That's great, Hua Jinyao. That's great. Chapter 622. Hua Jinyao's hand gently stroked her back. He could feel the relief and disbelief in her voice. He gently patted her back. Don't worry, my mother knows. Even if Lu Tongjia really didn't want to believe it, it didn't matter. If they got along well, they could spend more time together. If they couldn't, they didn't have to stay together. As long as he was there, he would protect her. It was only a matter of time whether Lu Tongjia accepted it or not. Su Qingsang looked at him and smiled at him. She wasn't particularly worried about it, nor did she particularly care about it. She just wanted to have a good relationship with the Hua family instead of being hostile every time they met. Especially when that person was Hua Jinyao's mother. She didn't want that to happen. After saying what she wanted to say, she pushed his body and said, "Excuse me, I'm going to take a shower." When she was about to get up, Hua Jinyao suddenly held her hand. He turned over and pressed his body on top of hers. She was stunned, blinked, and looked at Hua Jinyao. What's wrong? The bracelet you wore today is very beautiful. My mother likes it very much. Did you pick it out from Xianying? Yes. Alone? Xianying didn't accompany you? No. Su Qingsang shook her head, looked at Hua Jinyao and added, I met my uncle. He took me upstairs to pick it out. What a coincidence. Su Qingsang didn't like to hear his sarcastic words. Yes, what a coincidence. I made an appointment with him to pick out jewelry together. Then we did something else. As she spoke, she held Hua Jinyao's face with both hands. She raised her chin slightly, and the corners of her eyes were full of seduction. Guess what else we did? No matter what we did, I was jealous. Hua Jinyao grabbed her hand, leaned over, and bit her lips. Su Qingsang couldn't help but bite back in pain. As they nibbled, their lips were glued together. Hua Jinyao's kiss was a little rough, which showed that he was indeed unhappy. Su Qingsang didn't care. She did run into Zhang Yichen, and they did pick out a gift for Lu Tongjia together. She did not think there was anything to hide. Even if Zhang Yichen had feelings for her, he was a relative of the Hua family and had saved her life. She couldn't treat him as a stranger or hate him. She believed that as long as she behaved properly, she would not be afraid of being criticized. Yes. She knew what Zhang Yichen was thinking, even if he had never shown it in front of her. But she still knew. During those few days in Sea City, she had a fever and was dizzy. He thought he was going to die a few times. As her consciousness blurred, a liquid flowed into her lips. She was very thirsty. He didn't care about anything else as he gulped down the food. At that time, she didn't know that she had drunk Zhang Yichen's blood. There was no light in the narrow space. Everything depended on feeling. She remembered a dazed moment of consciousness. She was thirsty and hungry. His lips were dry and cracked, and it was the most uncomfortable time. At that moment, the warm wrist was placed next to her lips. She only realized that something was wrong after taking 2 sips. That smell was not water. It was blood. She wanted to open her eyes, but even if she did, she couldn't see anything in the darkness. She heard Zhang Yichen's breathing and his heartbeat. After she knew what she was drinking, she couldn't drink anymore. At that moment, in a daze, she heard Zhang Yichen's words. Very softly, "You have to live. You have to live." The man's voice was hoarse, and he was weak from excessive blood loss. 2 simple words, but they contained too many emotions. Su Qingsang had a fever and was in a daze, but in the end, she could only let herself pass out. She was not stupid. She could understand some things after connecting the dots. When she woke up in Sea City and heard that she was saved by Zhang Yichen, she understood everything. But she would rather not understand anything. She couldn't ask Zhang Yichen about it, nor could she show any extra attention to him. She was married, and she had someone she loved. She could only let Zhang Yichen down. Her attitude today was not very good. It could even be said that she was quite cold-blooded. She treated her savior like that. She could be considered a heartless person. But she had no choice. Who was Zhang Yichen? He was a senior colonel and he was about to be promoted. He was also a relative of the Hua family. It was impossible and absolutely not allowed for there to be even the slightest hint of ambiguity between them. Even if it was just a thought, it wouldn't do. Her lips hurt again, and she came back to her senses. Hu Jinyao was staring at her face. His eyes were burning, and there was a hint of dissatisfaction in them. She suddenly smiled. When she smiled, Hu Jinyao became even angrier. "TSK, thinking about another man in front of me. Su Qingsang, you don't want to live, do you?" "Yes." Su Qingsang nodded and admitted it generously. Wrapping her arms around his neck, she leaned over and bit him on the lips. "I want to die." She put her lips close to his ear and said very slowly, "I want to die." Hu Jinyao's eyes darkened, and his eyes turned red. He wanted to swallow this woman alive. At that moment, Su Qingsang rolled over and pressed him under her body. "You want me to die?" Su Qingsang purposely let out a sigh when she said the word, "die." At this moment, Su Qingsang was like a demon. Hu Jinyao believed that he was willing to turn into Tang Song and let her squeeze him dry. "Don't worry." Hu Jinyao pulled her waist into his arms. "Tonight you're dead." Su Qingsang responded to him with a series of soft laughter. Those thoughts had already been tossed beyond the highest heavens at this moment. There was only her and him in front of them. They had each other. When she got up in the morning, Old Master Hua and Hua Mingguang were still there. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao had gone too far last night. She almost couldn't get up. If she hadn't remembered that this was the Hua family at the last minute, she would have slept until noon. When she passed by Lu Tongjia, she found that although Lu Tongjia's face wasn't kind, it was at least gentle. "Grandpa, Dad, Mom." "Grandpa, Dad, Auntie." Su Qingsang also greeted them. However, the way she addressed them was a little different. Lu Tongjia frowned and looked at Su Qingsang in front of her. Her lips moved, but she wanted to say something, but she didn't. The weather was a little hot, and Su Qingsang was wearing a silk shirt today. Lu Tongjia sat diagonally to her side. Because the collar of Su Qingsang's shirt was a little big, from her angle, she could see a kiss mark on Su Qingsang's collarbone. Her expression was a little strange. Halfway through the meal, Hua Mingguang glanced at Hua Jinyao. "Hua Yifan's plan has been interrupted for a long time. We don't know how much manpower and material resources we invested in it. You, don't worry about that plan. I've already asked someone to start again. That was Qi Shiwei's painstaking effort. He wouldn't let anyone else touch it. Even if Hu Jiniao wanted to do it, he had to be personally involved. Hu Mingguang still felt a little uncomfortable when he thought of what Hu Jiniao had done. However, he didn't say anything else. Lu Tongjia tugged at Hu Mingguang's sleeve. She had made up her mind to repair her relationship with Hu Jiniao. She wouldn't let her son be unhappy. The meal was peaceful. Lu Tongjia saw the hickey on Su Qingsong's neck several times. She wanted to ask when they were planning to have children, but she couldn't bring herself to ask. Forget it, our relationship has just recovered. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it later. Hu Jiniao was about to leave after dinner. However, he seemed to have thought of something and went to the kitchen. If Lu Tongjia wasn't responsible for the incident on the Dragon Boat Festival, then who could it be? If the Hua family had such a person with evil intentions, it would definitely be an unpredictable bomb to the Hua family. He would not allow such a person to exist in his family. He called Auntie Zhou, Auntie Wang, Uncle Cheng, Xiao Xia, and Xiao Jiang over. Hu Jiniao rarely interfered with family affairs. Lu Tongjia was in charge of most of them. Seeing him like this, they were all startled. The Hua family's house was their own place, and the surveillance cameras were only installed outside the house. Therefore, he could only ask these people about what happened on the day of the Dragon Boat Festival. Uncle Cheng came out first to explain the situation. Because the Hua family had dinner outside that day, the servants in the house didn't have to do anything. After dinner, the Hua family and the guests came back. The kitchen began to make soup to sober up. Then, everyone was sent to their respective rooms. When Su Qingsang got into the car, she found that Hu Jiniao didn't look too good. What's wrong? Did he have a conflict with Lu Tongjia again? Hu Jiniao narrowed his eyes and said coldly, I realized that I let Su Peijian go too easy on her by letting her go to jail for 5 years. Su Qingsang froze for a moment when she heard those words that came out of nowhere. Looking at Hu Jiniao, she thought of what Lu Tongjia had said the day before. She suddenly thought of something. The person who drugged Uncle was Su Peijian? Hu Jiniao glanced at her. The look in his eyes confirmed everything. Is she crazy? Su Qingsang suddenly closed her eyes. When she opened them again, she was a little unsure. No, she wanted to say that how would she know? However, she thought of something else. It wasn't the first day that Zhang Yichen had feelings for her. She didn't know, but others could see it clearly. Su Peijian was a smart person, and she was deliberately targeting her. Of course, she wouldn't miss any opportunity. She didn't say the second half of the sentence, and Hu Jiniao didn't care. He really didn't want Su Qingsang to know about Zhang Yichen's feelings. It was good that she didn't know. She's in jail now. Hu Jiniao's eyes flashed with ruthlessness. If you want her to go to jail for a few more years, it's not impossible. Those who bullied his woman had to pay the price. He didn't know about it before. If he knew, he wouldn't let Su Peijian go so easily. Speaking of which, Su Peijian hadn't done anything evil like murder or arson, but everything she had done had stepped on Hu Jiniao's bottom line. Chapter 623. Let Su Peijian stay in prison for a few more years? When Su Qingsang thought of this possibility, the first person she thought of was Xiang Kaiping. When Su Peijian came out, how old would Xiang Kaiping be? Don't touch her for now. Honey, I don't like your soft-heartedness. It's not that I'm soft-hearted. I want to see her. Ever since Su Peijian had been in prison, Su Qingsang hadn't visited Su Peijian. They were sisters. She thought that she might need to visit her once. Could be considered as a closure. I don't think there's anything to see. Hu Jiniao had an indescribable hatred for Su Peijian. If you want, it's easy to lock her up for the rest of her life. It was even easier to make Su Peijian live a life worse than death. It's okay. She's already locked up. What can she do to me? I'll go see her. After all, she and Su Peijian were sisters. Moreover, she and Xiang Kaiping, and Su Peijian and Li Qianxue were related. Okay. Hu Jiniao squeezed her hand. No matter what, don't be soft-hearted. Just meet her once. Okay. Su Peijian was wearing an orange prison uniform. There was her number on her right chest. Her long hair had been cut short long ago. Her hair was short, and her face was still bright, but it was a little more pale and haggard. In that pale and haggard, there was also some unwillingness and resentment. It hadn't been long enough for her to melt away all the hostility in her body. But it was enough. A completely different person. This was the first time Su Qingsang had seen Su Peijian like this. Dashi. When Su Peijian saw Su Qingsang appear, she laughed. I didn't expect that you would be the one who came to see me on the visiting day. I'm really flattered. When she said the last 4 words, she deliberately paused. Su Qingsang didn't like Su Peijian like this. Sharp and mean. I thought that the 2 months you spent in prison would be enough for you to reflect on the mistakes you've made. Mistakes? What did I do wrong? As Su Peijian said this, the hatred in her eyes deepened. That woman gave me that plan. What's wrong with me using it? Hua Yifan was also a descendant of the Hua family. What was the difference between him and Hua Jinyao? What did I do wrong? Taking without asking is a thief. Later, Hua Jinyao told her about the case. She could roughly guess a few things. Su Peijian didn't steal it. He had given it to her, but he had asked her to give it to Hua Jinyao, not to use it herself. Ha 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 ha. Su Peijian laughed. All right, did you come here today to laugh at me? If that's the case, then I won't be accompanying you. She stood up and was about to leave when Su Qingsang suddenly said, You drugged Hua Jinyao's uncle during the Dragon Boat Festival, didn't you? Su Peijian stopped in her tracks. She suddenly moved closer to Su Qingsang, her eyes gleaming with anticipation. Looks like you found out? What? Did Hua Jinyao suspect you? She doesn't want you anymore. We're fine. Su Qingsang didn't want to explain. Her relationship with Hua Jinyao wasn't something she could understand. I'm here to ask you why. Why? Su Peijian laughed wildly. Things have come to this, and you're asking me why? She slapped her hands hard on the table in front of her. The loud noise attracted the scolding of the prison guard next to her. 7587. Behave yourself. Su Qingsang, it's all your fault that I'm in this state. You're asking me why? If it weren't for you, would I be as miserable as I am today? All of this is your fault. It's you. Su Qingsang. Su Peijian's actions caused the prison guard to scold her again. She hid the hatred on her face, and her voice was extremely cold. Su Qingsang, you wanted to see me make a fool of myself. You've seen it. Please forgive me for not being able to accompany you anymore. Su Qingsang didn't want to say more to Su Peijian, but when she saw her and thought of the 12 years she had been high-spirited, she couldn't tell how she felt. It's your own fault that you're in this state. She took a deep breath to calm herself down. She looked at Su Peijian, who had already stood up and was looking at her. Through the glass, her expression was indifferent, and her eyes were clear. Facing the hatred in Su Peijian's eyes, she was surprisingly calm. Su Peijian, you're in this state. You sent yourself to such a place because of yourself. Yes, you feel that you've lost the protection of the Su family. You feel that you're no longer the daughter of the Li family. You can't stand such a difference. You feel that I've taken everything away from you. But have you ever thought that it's because you're selfish? Su Peijian, because you're selfish, because you only want to monopolize it, but you're not willing to share it. Because you don't want the person who gets everything to be me. That's why you're so intense and extreme. Su Peijian couldn't help but sneer. Yes, I'm not willing. Why should I be willing? To let you press on top of me? Have I ever pressed on top of you? Su Peijian, after the fact that we exchanged identities is revealed, if you're willing to take a step back. Even one step. As long as you're willing to share, as long as you're willing to accept me, we can still be a family. Whether it's grandpa or mom, they've raised you for so many years. They won't really ignore you. But how did you do it? What did you do? Do you want me to remind you? Okay. Even if mom and grandpa don't want you anymore, what about auntie? If there was anyone Su Qingsang couldn't bear, it would be Xiang Kai-ping. She brought you to Rong City and gave you a new start. She gave you a chance to start over. She's so good to you. What have you done to her? You don't like her. You've broken her heart time and time again. Su-Peision, who did you let down? You don't like Auntie, and you resent Grandpa and Mom. You drugged me, and you even got Shou Yanba to destroy me? You even drugged Uncle? You wanted to destroy me, destroy Jinyao. Su-Peision, you've done so many things. Do you think Jinyao's imprisonment was unjust? It was rare for Su Qingsang to be so agitated. But seeing Su-Peision being so stubborn, she was very angry. Do you know that after your accident, Auntie came to me? Su-Peision was stunned for a moment. She raised her head and looked at Su Qingsang. Auntie came to beg me, and then she went to beg Jinyao. Originally, if you just took the plan, Jinyao wouldn't do anything to you. But you came up with such a vicious way to deal with me in Lin City. Jinyao couldn't just do nothing. I can't be a saint. I can pretend that nothing happened. But do you know that Auntie is innocent? She's so old, but she still came out to beg for help for you. You probably didn't see that Auntie's hair is mostly white, right? Su-Peision's face was a little stiff. That woman's hair was white? She didn't know. Xiang Kaiping came to visit her in prison, but she refused to see her. If it weren't for Su Qingsang's current identity as the young mistress of the Hua family, she wouldn't have wanted to see her when the prison guards brought her out. She didn't want to see anyone. You hate the heavens, hate the earth, hate everyone in this world. Have you ever thought about how many people in this world love you? If you weren't so extreme, you might have married Hui Yifan by now. No matter how bad Hui Yifan is, he's still the vice president of Tianyu Group. If you were willing to take a step back and get along with me, even if we couldn't be as close as sisters, at least we wouldn't be like enemies like we are now. You ignore the good intentions of others. You don't use your advantages. All you think about is hatred and revenge. Is this my fault? Do you know that before you drugged me, Grandpa told Mom that if you were willing to come back, the door of the Su family would always be open for you? Yusin came to me and said that he wanted to help you. Su-Peision, you're also someone who had a good hand. Why did you ruin your good hand? Su-Peision's body sat down. She sat there motionless, her expression a little stiff. Do you know that there are some people in this world who are 1,000 times, 10,000 times more miserable than you? But not everyone wants to take revenge, right? She thought of Qi Shiwei. In terms of misery, Qi Shiwei was much more miserable than Su-Peision. She shook her head. There were some things that had to be said. Everyone was smart, so there was no point in saying any more. Su-Peision, your sentence isn't long. It's only 5 years. If you behave well, you might be able to get out in less than 3 years. Are you sure that you want to continue spending the rest of your life in hatred, jealousy, and endless revenge against others? You have to know that even if you come out after 5 years in prison, you're only 30 years old. Su-Peision, I've said everything I wanted to say. After today, I won't come to see you again. If you come out in a few years and are willing to turn over a new leaf, I believe that both Dad and Auntie will still recognize you as their daughter. If you're not willing, I'll still say the same thing. No matter what you want to do, I'm not afraid of you. I'll accompany you to the end. Su Qingsang rarely spoke so much. She felt a little dry. She stood up and took one last look at Su-Peision. Su-Peision, you're on your own. Su Qingsang picked up her bag and turned to leave. When she got into her car, her emotions had completely calmed down. Thinking about Su-Peision's appearance just now, she took out her phone and called Su Chenghui. Qingsang? Since the last time Su Chenghui and Su Qingsang had a conflict because of Su-Peision, Su Chenghui hadn't contacted Su Qingsang. He called Su Qingsang several times, but she didn't answer. He knew that she still blamed him for being biased toward Su-Peision for no reason. However, some things had become a habit of his in more than 12 years of ignorance. He tried to change slowly in the future, but Su Qingsang seemed to not want to give him a chance, just like Li Qianxue. Su Chenghui was inexplicably excited when he received Su Qingsang's call. Qingsang, you called me? Su Qingsang could hear his excitement, and her heart was a little bitter. She shook her head, and her voice was very soft. Dad, I called to tell you that something happened to Su-Peision. She's now in Rong City prison. What? If you have time, come and see her. No, how did something happen to her? Isn't she in Lin City? No, I haven't seen her for a long time. She. If there's anything, wait until you come to Rong City. It's not clear on the phone. But I think you'll want to see her and talk to her. Perhaps with the care and companionship of her family, Su Peijian would be less hostile and more peaceful. Qing sang, Can you say something first? Dad, you'll know when you come. I still have something to do, so I'll hang up first. After saying this, Su Qingsang hung up the phone. She didn't hate Su Changhui, but she really couldn't help but mind him thinking of her as a bad person as soon as something happened to her. She also knew that she couldn't ignore Su Changhui for the rest of her life, but she had to give her some time to slowly digest the fact that she would never be able to be as close as father and daughter to Su Changhui in this life. She put down the phone and was about to start the car to leave, but she found that a person got out of a taxi on the opposite road. The somewhat old, slightly haggard face was impressively Xiang Kaiping. She saw Xiang Kaiping, and Xiang Kaiping also saw her. Looking at the prison gate behind her, Xiang Kaiping didn't expect Su Qingsang to come to see Su Peijian. This really surprised her. Today was the once-a-month prison visit day. She came very early. The last time she came to see Su Peijian didn't want to see her. If she missed it today, it would be next month. Suddenly seeing Su Qingsang, she stood there and didn't move. Their eyes met. Even across the road, Su Qingsang could see Xiang Caiping's face, which had aged more than 10 years. Her heart trembled. Su Qingsang quickly got out of the car and ran in Xiang Caiping's direction. Auntie, you're here to see Peijian? She was a little unconfident. After all, her daughter was sent to prison by Hua Jinyao. Yes. Strangely, there was no resentment or dissatisfaction in Xiang Caiping's eyes. Today is prison visit day. Su Qingsang looked at the taxi that had already left. Auntie, hurry up and go. I'll wait for you here. I'll send you back later. Xiang Caiping's lips moved. She wanted to refuse, but in the end, she didn't. She was old and didn't understand the tricks of young people. The last time she took a taxi, the driver left. She walked for more than half an hour before she found the bus stop. Sorry to trouble you. Su Qingsang shook her head. Auntie, don't stand on ceremony. Hurry up and go. Xiang Kaiping turned around and walked towards the prison gate. Thinking of the last time she came, she turned back and glanced at Su Qingsang. You came to see her. Have you seen her? Yes. She saw you? Yes. At first, she didn't want to see her. But since Su Qingsang was here, she was naturally prepared. The Hua family had a good relationship with all parties in Rong City. If there was any trouble, it would only be a phone call. Hearing this, Xiang Caiping's expression relaxed a little. If Su Peijian was willing to see Su Qingsang, did it mean that she was willing to see her? Su Qingsang waited for Xiang Kaiping in the car for half an hour. She finally came out. Her complexion was better than when she went in. She quickly started the car and parked the car beside Xiang Kaiping. Auntie, get in the car. Xiang Caiping's eyes were red as if she had cried. Su Qingsang wanted to ask, but in the end, she couldn't. After she fastened her seatbelt and started the car, Xiang Kaiping wiped her tears away. You've lost weight and look haggard. Su Qingsang knew that she was talking about Su Peijian. It's okay. When she comes out, take good care of yourself. You'll get better. Yes. Xiang Kaiping smiled bitterly. I don't know if I'll be able to live until she comes out. Auntie, don't say that. You'll live to a ripe old age. I don't expect to live to a ripe old age. If I can live until she comes out, I'll persuade her to live a good life and know her place. I'll find a man and have a child. If I can see that day, I'll be able to die in peace. Su Qingsang didn't know how to respond. She had said what she had said today, but she really didn't know if Su Peijian would change in 5 years. She didn't speak, and Xiang Kaiping didn't want her to. The prison was far away. It was in the suburbs. It would take more than 2 hours to drive back. She looked out of the window and almost said to herself, She's a good child. I just lost my mind for a moment. I regret it. It's all my fault. Of course, I shouldn't have abandoned her. I shouldn't have thought that Su Chenghui would teach her well. It's all my fault. Xiang Kaiping nagged for a long time. Sometimes Su Qingsang would respond, and sometimes she would just listen to Xiang Kaiping. Just like that, they arrived at the small villa where Xiang Kaiping lived. The car stopped. After more than 2 hours in the car, Xiang Kaiping was obviously tired. She didn't rush to get out of the car. Instead, she glanced at Su Qingsang. Qingsang, thank you. You're welcome, Auntie. You're a good child. Xiang Caiping's eyes were a little red. Jinyao is lucky to marry you. Auntie, it's okay. You can go. I'm going back. Xiang Kaiping got out of the car. She was in a much better mood when she saw her daughter. However, that silhouette still looked lonely, old, and had a kind of fragility that no one could look at directly. What's wrong? Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, who had been silent since she got home. He reached out and pulled her into his arms, letting her sit on his lap. You're in a bad mood? What happened? About the hospital? Su Qingsang shook her head. About Su Peijian? You went to see her? What did she say? Jinyao really hated Su Peijian to the extreme. Nothing. Su Qingsang put her arms around his waist and said in a low voice, I just met Auntie. Jinyao, do you know? I saw Auntie today and realized that she's more than 10 years older. She's about the same age as my mother. But Su Qingsang didn't finish her sentence. Jinyao understood what she meant. You're not asking me to get Su Peijian out, are you? Absolutely not. No. Su Qingsang shook her head. She sat up straight and looked at Jinyao. She had been thinking about this all day. In fact, she wasn't sure if Jinyao would agree. Chapter 6:24. He didn't speak, and the living room was very quiet for a while. It was a little hot, and Su Qingsang was a little sweaty in Jinyao's arms. She put her hands on Jinyao's shoulders. This idea was the result of Su Qingsang's careful consideration today. I know you might be unhappy, but Auntie is alone. Even with a nanny, there might be some things that can't be taken care of. Also, Su Peijian will be locked up in prison for 4 to 5 years. When she comes out, I don't know what the situation will be. If we bring Auntie to live with us, at least she won't be so lonely. What do you think? Jinyao looked at her. Have you decided? Not really. I'm asking you what you think. If you don't come, I won't go to pick her up. But I think even if Auntie comes, we won't have any problems getting along. You know, Auntie is a good person. She takes good care of us in Lin City. I really don't want to see her alone. If they hadn't been together for the past few months, Su Qingsang would have sighed at most. But after those months and what Xiang Kaiping had done for her, she couldn't bear to see her alone. She didn't want to see her in such a miserable and lonely old age. Jinyao held her hand and wrapped it in his palm. Her hand was very slender, not the kind of hand that was made of flesh. Because it was often disinfected during surgery, it was transparent and white. His fingertips slid across her palm bit by bit, looking at the lines on it. Honey, look at this emotional line. It's too deep and too long. At first glance, you can tell that she's a person who values relationships. Su Qingsang listened to his nonsense, but she couldn't laugh. How come I didn't know that you can tell fortunes? All right, if you want to say that I'm indecisive, just say it, but I really don't want to see Auntie like this. Okay. Jinyao nodded, held her hand, and stared at Su Qingsang's face. Just when she thought that he would agree, he suddenly became serious. You want Auntie to move in with us? Yes. Have you thought that she will agree? Well, Su Qingsang thought of Xiang Caiping's stubborn side. I will persuade her. Although Xiang Kaiping had a nanny at home now, the nanny would come home. Even if he was by her side 24/7, that feeling wasn't something that could be compared to being with a relative or family member. All right, you can convince her, but what about me? You? Su Peijian is her daughter. Who sent Su Peijian to prison? Even if Xiang Kaiping didn't hate Su Peijian, she couldn't possibly not hold a grudge against her, right? Su Qingsang was speechless. Her voice weakened. Maybe Auntie doesn't blame you. Jinyao continued. It's not my fault. But I sent her daughter to prison. It's a fact that I ignored her when she came to me. Su Qingsang understood what he meant, but she said, I'm not that kind of person. She's not, but Su Peijian is. Hu Jiniao knew that Su Qingsang meant well, but some people really didn't deserve to be treated well. After Su Peijian gets out of prison, do you think she'll thank you for taking care of her mother? Or does she hate you for snatching away her only family, her only motherly love? I didn't. You didn't, but she'll think you did. Hu Jiniao didn't mind giving her a good lesson. Do you know why Su Peijian has become what she is today? She has a paranoid personality, that kind of person. To put it bluntly, you can't afford to offend her. She will only believe what she has already decided. As for anything else, she doesn't care. Qingsang, if you really care about Auntie, visit her more often when you're free. I believe she will be very happy. But if you want to bring her to live with you, I don't think it's appropriate. Su Qingsang didn't say anything, but her face darkened. Hua Jiniao's analysis was reasonable, but Jiniao will only take care of her for a few years? When Su Peijian gets out of prison, we'll return Auntie to her. Besides, you said that we don't know what will happen to her when she gets out. In that case, why don't we let Auntie enjoy the warmth of a family first? Hu Jiniao knew that she was stubborn, but he didn't expect her to be so stubborn. Qingsang, you have to let her enjoy the warmth of a family. What about your mother? Seeing that she didn't react for a while, Hu Jiniao didn't mind clarifying. Your mother, Ms. Li Qianxue, hates two people in her life. There are two people I hate the most in my life. One is your father. Now that they are divorced, the other is Auntie. Then, Mrs. Hua, when you bring Auntie to take care of and give her the warmth of a family, where do you put your mother? Su Qingsang looked at him blankly. Her expression was a little silly and a little dazed. Li Qianxue? Oh right, she had actually forgotten about Li Qianxue. Hu Jiniao shook his head with a smile and reached out to gently flick her forehead. But, no buts. Hu Jiniao's voice was very serious. Qingsang, sometimes life is such a cruel multiple-choice question. It's either one or two. There's no three. Su Qingsang's lips opened and closed and opened again. She thought of the back of Xiang Kaiping when she got out of the car today, and the way she staggered into the prison gate. She was actually very upset. But Hu Jiniao was right about one thing. Li Qianxue and Xiang Kaiping couldn't coexist. Li Qianxue wasn't in Rong City now. If she were in Rong City and knew that she was going to take care of Xiang Kaiping, she would definitely object. This action would definitely affect the mother-daughter relationship between her and Li Qianxue. Su Qingsang said the word I and lowered her head. Hu Jiniao understood her feelings. Xiang Kaiping was also very good to him, and he was also very willing to take care of her. However, there was no need to cause unnecessary trouble. He wasn't afraid of trouble, but he didn't want Su Qingsang to face it. I didn't think that much. I'm not saying that I don't respect my mother. Su Qingsang buried her head in his chest. Her voice was very soft. If he hadn't been so close, he would have almost missed it. I just feel sorry for Auntie. Those few months, Auntie was really good to her. Do you still remember? She knitted a sweater for me. That sweater is still in the closet upstairs. She made local home-cooked dishes for me in Lin City, and every day, she would think of ways to be good to me. I know that if you want to say that she treated me like her daughter, that's because she treated me like her daughter. These good things were originally for Su Peijian, but Hu Jiniao couldn't help it. I couldn't treat her like a stranger. Not to mention that she was hit by a car in order to buy a peace jade for me. She almost died and was almost paralyzed. Her voice was broken. She raised her head to look at Hu Jiniao with tears in her eyes. I just feel sorry for her. Her man was stolen, and because of a moment of anger, she abandoned her daughter and ran away. It wasn't easy for her to recognize the daughter, but she was a fake. When she recognized the real daughter, she went to prison. If it were someone else with a weaker mind, they might have committed suicide. I know, but you can't offend your own mother for someone else's mother, right? Hu Jiniao wrapped her body in his arms and gently patted her back. Ching sang, you've been with Auntie for a few months, and you have feelings for her. I understand that you want to take care of her, but there are some things in this world that can't be helped. You can't have your cake and eat it too. Su Qingsang didn't speak. She knew. If she wanted to take care of a lonely old man today, maybe Li Chenxue wouldn't have any objections. But that person was Xiang Kaiping, so she couldn't. But what did it have to do with Xiang Kaiping? All right, don't think about it. Hu Jiniao held her face with both hands and made her look at him. I don't think Auntie will be willing to live with us. Xiang Kaiping was a very proud person. The worse her situation was, the more unwilling she would be to accept help from others. After all, who would want to bear the pity of others? Su Qingsang knew that, but she felt sad. Hu Jiniao saw that she was so sad, so he leaned over and kissed her on the lips. Honey, why don't we go out and play? Go out and play? Where? She wasn't in the mood at all. You see, we didn't have a honeymoon when we got married. Why don't we find a place to have fun for a few days? Su Qingsang glanced at Hu Jiniao and suddenly smiled. Jiniao, don't be like this. I'll adjust myself. She buried her face in his chest and put her arms around his waist. Hu Jiniao, thank you. Actually, it's good to go out for a walk. It doesn't have to be for relaxation. We can also go out and play. How about we take it as a honeymoon? Su Qingsang rubbed her face against his chest. Are you kidding me? You've been very busy recently. Can you really leave your company? Hu Jiniao frowned and thought of the ongoing case. He really didn't have time. Next month. Hu Jiniao thought of something. Next month, I'm going to Italy to talk about a contract. Will you go with me? Let's talk about it then. I still have to take the exam. Recently, the hospital had been very busy. She had an exam and a paper to write. Recently, because of these things, a lot of progress had been delayed. Didn't you say that the exam is at the end of the month? After you finish the exam, we can go at the beginning of next month. Just take it as a relaxation. How about it? Okay. Su Qingsang couldn't find a reason to refuse. She couldn't refuse his kindness, so she felt a lot better. I haven't been to Italy yet. Then it's settled. We can also have fun in Europe for a few days. Okay, I'll listen to you. Su Chenghui sat across from Su Qingsang. The father and daughter hadn't seen each other for a few months, but they didn't say anything to each other. Su Qingsang was expressionless. Su Chenghui looked at her with a guilty expression. After getting off the plane, he went to Su Qingsang's hospital almost without rest. He was lucky that Su Qingsang just got off work. She didn't bring Su Chenghui home, but to a nearby hotel. They sat in a corner of the hotel's magnificent restaurant. The whispers of other guests at the other tables didn't affect their conversation at all. Her phone rang. Su Qingsang glanced at Su Chenghui and picked up the phone. Hu Jiniao had a gathering with his childhood friends tonight. He asked her if she wanted to go. No need. I have something to do. Junxing is back. It's rare for him to come back. If you're not particularly busy, I'll come pick you up. Su Qingsang's voice was very soft. You can play with them. My dad is here. Hu Jiniao understood. Okay, you go ahead. I'll come to see you later. Okay. After hanging up the phone, Su Qingsang looked at Su Chenghui in front of her. Time really treated this man well. He was already middle-aged, but he still looked elegant and stylish. His temperament didn't look like a businessman at all. People would believe that he was a professor at some university. I know you're here to know about Su Peixian. I'll tell you. Qingsang. Su Chenghui interrupted her and took out a box from his pocket. This is a gift I bought for you when I went to France last time. It's for you. Su Qingsang looked at the box. She wasn't unfamiliar with the logo on it. She wasn't in a hurry to take it. Instead, she looked at Su Chenghui. Su Peixian, she asked for it. If you want to plead for her or want Hu Jiniao to let her off, you don't have to say anything. You don't have to say anything. It was rare for her to be so unyielding in front of Su Chenghui. Half of it was because she really hated what Su Peixian had done, and the other half was because she was also a little uncomfortable with Su Chenghui's previous actions. Su Chenghui's expression was a little awkward. He rarely showed such a side in front of his children. It's not that. Qing sang. I didn't mean to plead for Paisian. I just saw this gift when I went to France last time and thought it was very suitable for you. His voice was very soft. Ever since the two daughters switched back, whether it was Li Qianxue or Su Qingsang, he had always been a little less confident. His sincere eyes didn't seem to be fake. The sincerity in his eyes didn't seem to be fake. Su Qingsang felt a little awkward and took the small box. Thank you, Dad. You're welcome. Su Chenghui called the waiter and began to order. He then asked Su Qingsang what she liked to eat. Su Qingsang had been here with Hu Jinyao before, so she randomly ordered a dish. Su Chenghui didn't force her. The two of them ordered 4 dishes and a soup. After the waiter left, he looked at Su Qingsang with a faintly concerned expression. How have you been recently? Has Hu Jinyao been treating you well? Very well. Although the relationship between Hu Jinyao and Lu Tongjia couldn't be built overnight, it was obvious that they had become much closer recently. They didn't go back to the old mansion. Occasionally, Lu Tongjia would come over for dinner. That's good, that's good. After saying this, Su Chenghui couldn't find anything else to say. He picked up the teacup in front of him and poured a cup of tea for himself and a cup for Su Qingsang. He didn't speak. Su Qingsang had been estranged from him for a long time. She couldn't find anything to say, so she could only speak first. That Su Paisian is now serving her sentence in Rong City Prison. Her crime is theft of trade secrets. Before Qingsang, I really just wanted to see you. Since Paisian went to prison, she must have done something wrong. I know everything. He didn't say what he knew, but some words were already his attitude. Su Qingsang was stunned for a moment. Dad, you should listen to it. In Su Chenghui's heart, Su Paisian was his most beloved daughter. Now that things had become like this, he should know. He briefly told her what Su Paisian had done. She drugged Zhang Yichen in Rong City, and then she went to Lin City and drugged her. Later, she stole Hu Jinyao's plan. Letting her go to prison for a few years is a big punishment for her. But I don't think Hu Jinyao and I did anything wrong. Su Chenghui sat there and didn't say anything. In fact, he was also quite shocked. Is she crazy? I don't know. Su Qingsang shook her head and said softly, Dad, it's good that you're here. Go see her. Talk to her. Comfort her. Su Chenghui's expression was complicated. Finally, he nodded and said, Okay. They didn't say anything during the meal. After the meal, Su Qingsang knew that normally, she should let Su Chenghui stay at her house. There was a guest room anyway, but she didn't want to. Dad, let me book a room for you. That was why she had brought Su Chenghui to this hotel for a meal. It's okay. I'll book it myself. Su Chenghui glanced at Su Qingsang with a hint of disappointment in his eyes. Su Qingsang saw it, but she didn't intend to invite him. She seemed to understand Hu Jinyao's feelings before. After being hurt by his loved ones for too long, sometimes it really wasn't easy to accept them. Su Chenghui booked a room. Su Qingsang planned to send him back to his room and leave. Dad, rest early. If there's nothing else, I'll go back first. Su Chenghui's lips moved. He wanted Su Qingsang to stay for a while. He wanted to talk to her. However, he couldn't find a position. Su Qingsang's phone rang at this moment. Li Qianxue was sending a video call request. At this time every day, as long as it was convenient for Su Qingsang, she would definitely video call Li Qianxue. Looking at Su Chenghui now, she was a little hesitant, but she still picked up. Mom! As soon as she called her mom, she immediately saw Su Chenghui's eyes suddenly light up. He stared at her phone with a fervent gaze. Su Qingsang slightly turned her body so that Li Qianxue, who was on the other side of the video call, wouldn't see any clues. Qingsang. Li Qianxue noticed at a glance that Su Qingsang wasn't at home or in the hospital. Are you outside? Is it convenient for you to talk? I'm outside. I have something to do. I'll go back later. Su Qingsang noticed that Su Chenghui took a step towards her. She subconsciously took half a step back. Mom, are you still working overtime? Li Qianxue was in her office. It was obvious that she was still working overtime. There's still a little work to be done. I'll go back later. Don't work too late. Su Qingsang knew that Li Qianxue had recently been working on a new project and was actually very busy. Mom, if you're busy, I'll talk to you later. It's okay. Li Qianxue heard a knock on the door before she could hang up. Before she could hang up the phone, the person outside had already come in. I knew it. You're working overtime again. It was a clear male voice that sounded very young. It was too late for Li Qianxue to turn off the video call. The voice had already come in. I brought you dinner. Come eat before you work. Who let you in? I knocked on the door. You knocked on the door, and I didn't allow you to come in. Li Qianxue stood up and was about to turn off the video call when Su Qingsang saw the man approaching. Get out. Do you hear me? I'm already in, and I'm here to bring you dinner. You don't have to be so cold, do you? Su Qingsang heard the sound of approaching voices. Soon she saw a figure. Is this your daughter? She doesn't look like you. Hi. Hello, I'm you. It was a face that looked quite young and quite handsome. She froze for a moment. Before she could speak, Li Qianxue had already hung up the call. Su Qingsang wanted to ask who that person was, but she didn't say anything. But now she didn't have the chance. The man looked to be in his early 30s. His voice was so casual when he spoke to Li Qianxue. Su Qingsang blinked and thought of an almost impossible thing. That man, could he be her mother's suitor? If that was the case, then it was really too. From the corner of her eye, she saw Su Chenghui, who was still standing in front of her. Su Qingsang restrained the emotions on her face, because she found that Su Chenghui's expression was very ugly. Dad. No matter how wrong the other party was, he was still her father. Su Qingsang took a step forward with concern. Are you okay? Su Chenghui came back to his senses and shook his head stiffly. Dad? I'm fine. Su Chenghui's voice was a little obscure. Go back and rest. It's getting late. Then you? Su Chenghui didn't seem to want to say more. Su Qingsang had nothing to say to him anyway. After saying a few words of concern, she left. Before leaving, she thought of Su Chenghui's pale and shocked face when he heard the man's voice. She suddenly felt that Su Chenghui seemed to be a little pitiful. When she got home, Hu Jiniao hadn't come back yet. She looked at the time. If Li Junxing came back, the group's party wouldn't end so early. She sent a video call request to Li Qianxue. However, the other party rejected it. She had to call instead. It rang for a long time. This time, Li Qianxue finally picked up. Qingsang. Li Qianxue's voice sounded a little strange. Su Qingsang couldn't help but be concerned. Mom? Are you okay? I'm fine. What could happen to me? I heard that you haven't eaten yet. I've eaten. I've already eaten. Li Qianxue spoke quickly, but Su Qingsang remembered that the man said he would bring her food. Would she be eating the food that the man sent her? Qingsang, I still have some documents to read. I'll talk to you tomorrow. Li Qianxue's voice was a little anxious. The man in front of her had already started to clean up the lunchbox on the table. The time it took for Su Qingsang to return home from the hotel was just enough for Li Qianxue to finish dinner. The man smiled at Li Qianxue arrogantly. His mouth moved as if he was about to speak. Li Qianxue glared at the man. Qingsang, I'll hang up first. Oh, okay. Su Qingsang hung up the phone. She was sure of two things. First, that man was most likely still in Li Qianxue's office. Second, that man and Li Qianxue were probably not ordinary people. Could also be Li Qianxue's suitor, or it could be a man that Li Qianxue admired. However, she was not in a hurry. Whether Li Qianxue had a new suitor or Li Qianxue fell in love with someone else, she believed that with her age and experience, she would know what she wanted. She also hoped that Li Qianxue could find happiness again. However, thinking of Su Chenghui's pale face today, Su Qingsang couldn't bear it. Chapter 6:25. As soon as Hu Jiniao ended the call with Su Qingsang, he met the eyes of the group of people in the private room. TSK. It's really different after getting married. Tang Mohan put one hand on Hu Jiniao's shoulder and poured him a glass of wine with the other hand. You need to report when you come out to play. It was just that they did not have a meal together, but they still stuck to each other for so long. Jingyao, you've really opened my eyes. Isn't that so? Chung Xianyun chimed in. Look at her glowing face. TSK, as expected. She's different after being nourished by love. Go away. Hu Jingyao smiled and picked up the wine in front of him. Are you jealous? Go get married too. We are not like you, willing to give up a forest for a tree. Be careful, the forest will be gone, and the trees will be gone. Hu Jinyao's words made the others hiss. Only Wan Xianyang looked quite upset. Brother Hua, why are you so lucky? Sister-in-law got together with you so easily. Why is sister-in-law's friend so hard to deal with? He was naturally talking about Shi Mengwan. He had traveled thousands of miles to pursue his wife, and he had even gone to France. Shi Mengwan didn't react. Brother, let me give you a piece of advice. Forget about Shi Mengwan. There were many good girls in Rong City. Don't hang yourself on her tree. Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang were together every day, and Su Qingsang would video call Shi Mengwan from time to time. He more or less knew that Shi Mengwan had someone in her heart. How am I bad? Wan Xianyang stood up as he spoke and made Schwarzenegger's signature gesture. Tell me I have a good figure, a good family background, and a good look. How am I not good enough for her? Last month, he casually went to gamble on a few stones and earned tens of millions. He usually looked sloppy, but everyone in the industry knew that it was just a facade. It has nothing to do with whether she's worthy or not. Hu Jinyao sincerely suggested. I heard from Qingsang that she has someone else in her heart. Don't even think about it. Who is it? Can he beat me? Wan Xianyang was unconvinced. Let him come out and fight one-on-one. Forget it. Li Junxing, who had been silent all this while, spoke up. How do you really like her? It was all because of unwillingness. If she really lets you chase after her, you might lose interest in her immediately. Junxing, that's not nice of you. Wan Xianyang didn't deny it. It was indeed very difficult for Shi Mengwan to pursue him. Who said that I won't cherish him once I get him? Maybe it's because he's had a hard time chasing her. So he's even more interested? Who would believe you? Li Junxing laughed and scolded. But now that you mention it, I'm a little interested. I want to know what a woman who can make my young master Wan so worried looks like. Aren't you in Lin City? You should have seen it before, right? No. He was very busy, and he cherished his feathers. He rarely went out to socialize. He had seen Su Qingsang many times, but he had never seen Su Qingsang's friends. If you see her, you might like her too. You think too much, Hu Jinyao answered for Li Junxing. If you're a playboy, then Junxing is a cold robot. The only thing he loves the most is his future. Everyone in the private room laughed. Who wouldn't agree? Li Junxing was already the mayor of a city at such a young age. His results in Lin City for more than a year were quite good. It was estimated that he would be promoted when his next term was up. Women. Li Junxing smiled. He didn't deny it. However, Hu Jinyao's matter reminded him of another thing. Halfway through the wine, the others ran over to join in the fun. Li Junxing sat next to Hu Jinyao. Jinyao, you'll know about this sooner or later. I think your great-uncle's family should have heard about it first. But I still decided to let you know. What? I went to City A on a business trip last time. There was a large-scale investment project there. Many local companies wanted to take it, but the plate was too big for them to handle. I think your company can give it a try. City A? Yes. Li Junxing briefly explained the situation. The preliminary estimate is that the profit is more than 1 billion. How about it? Do you do it or not? If you do it, I'll get someone to send you the information later. Yes. Hu Jinyao picked up the wine and poured it for Li Junxing and himself. Thank you, brother. The bidding and everything are internal. The mayor of City A has some relationship with me. He has a good relationship with your uncle. You can operate it. This project is in the bag. Hu Jinyao raised his glass and clinked glasses with Li Junxing. Thank you. You're welcome. The two of them drank enough. Hu Jiniao looked at the time and was about to leave. This time, it was Li Juanxing's turn to object. Jiniao, you're not being kind. Li Juanxing asked someone to serve a few more bottles of wine. Let's not talk about the fact that it's rare for me to come back and you're leaving. You've got the news too. You're gonna leave just like that? His voice rose a notch when he said the last sentence. Tang Mohan, Chang Xianyun, and the others immediately cheered and booed. Brother Li, Su Changlong complained with a look of disdain. You don't know Jin Yao. Ever since he got married, he's never spent the night outside. Every time he gets together, he doesn't sit for long and has to leave. He says he wants to go back to accompany his wife. Don't you think that's too much? Too much. That's quite too much. Isn't he clearly bullying us single dogs who don't have wives? Tell me, can you bear it? No. This time, everyone answered together. Hu Jiniao drank a lot today. Hearing this, he was very helpless. What do you want? Simple. Wan Xianyang had a smirk on his face. He clapped his hands and pushed the 2 bottles of XO and red wine in the middle of the table in front of Hu Jiniao. Settle these. I'll let you go. Otherwise, you'll stay until the end. Are you crazy? If he drank these 4 bottles, he would have to lie here today. Jiniao, if you're a coward, don't leave today. Don't even think about leaving today. His words were filled with provocation, and his gaze was filled with disdain. Li Juanxing watched them play with a faint smile on his face. In the past, there was still Hu Jiniao in Lin City. He told him to meet up when he had nothing to do. Ever since Hu Jiniao returned to Rong City, he was bored there alone. It was rare for him to come back and cause trouble with these people. Hu Jiniao had already gone to get the car keys, but they forced him to sit down again. However, he didn't forget to send a message to Yang Wenchang, asking him to pick him up later. When Hu Jiniao returned home, it was already midnight. Su Qingsang was in a daze when she heard the door open. She quickly got up, put on a coat, and went outside. She took a few glances and saw that the living room was brightly lit. Hu Jiniao was carried into the door by Yang Wenchang and another person she didn't know. Before she got close, she smelled alcohol. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable. Why is he so drunk? I don't know. Yang Wenchang really didn't know. When he went to pick him up, Hu Jiniao was already almost drunk. Assistant Yang, do me a favor and send him inside. Yang Wenchang helped put Hu Jiniao on the bed. Su Qingsang smelled the strong smell of alcohol and felt even more uncomfortable. However, Yang Wenchang was still there, so she forced herself not to lose her temper. Assistant Yang, you've worked hard. You can go back first. I'm here. Okay. Mrs. Hua, you've worked hard. Let's not go yet. All right, thank you. After sending them off, Su Qingsang closed the door and returned to her room. Hu Jiniao was dead drunk. The man, who had been sleeping soundly just a moment ago, felt uncomfortable because of the smell of alcohol. He stepped forward and looked at Hu Jiniao, resisting the urge to punch him. What was this guy doing? Why did he get so drunk without her? Jiniao? Hu Jiniao? She called him a few times, but he didn't respond at all. Helplessly, she stepped forward and took off his shoes. When she was about to take off his clothes, Hu Jiniao suddenly opened his eyes. He was so drunk that he didn't know where he was and couldn't even see who was in front of him. Drink. Who said I can't drink? Bring the wine. I'll show you. Drink, drink, drink. I'll just drink you to death. Su Qingsang rarely lost her temper. She slapped Hu Jiniao's hand away with a look of displeasure on her face. The voice was very familiar. Hu Jiniao widened his eyes and looked at the person in front of him. Qingsang? Old woman. Wife. He reached out and hugged Su Qingsang's waist. Su Qingsang fell on Hu Jiniao's body. As soon as she got close, she smelled the smell of alcohol on his body that almost made her faint. It was even more uncomfortable than before. Hu Jiniao, let go of me. She wanted to vomit. Wife, wife, come, give me a kiss. Hu Jiniao was drunk. He raised his head and was about to move closer. The smell of alcohol was even stronger now. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. A wave of nausea welled up in her. Without thinking, she pushed Huijianyao away and ran to the bathroom to vomit. Before she had time to rinse her mouth, Huijianyao followed her in. He staggered. When he saw the sink, his body leaned forward and he vomited as well. The pungent smell came again. Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore and vomited again. It was as if the two of them were competing to see who vomited more. After Huijianyao finished vomiting, he looked at Su Qingsang, who was still vomiting, and laughed. Wife, are you also drunk? As he spoke, he tried his best to glare in Su Qingsang's direction. Wife, you don't drink? Don't you? Drink your ass. His drunken words made Su Qingsang very angry. When she finally recovered, she saw Huijianyao's body slip and he sat on the ground. His heart was filled with anger. Huijianyao, get up. She wanted to pull him up, but the man's body was full of the smell of alcohol. Not only was there the smell of alcohol, but there was also the filth he had vomited. Su Qingsang was furious. After being married to Huijianyao for more than a year, it wasn't that he hadn't drunk before, but he had never been as drunk as he was now. She couldn't pull him up, and the smell of alcohol on his body made her feel even more uncomfortable. She was so angry that she didn't want to care about this guy anymore. She glared at Huijianyao, who was sober, for a long time. In the end, she couldn't bear to go forward and help him up. As soon as Su Qingsang approached Huijianyao, she actually wanted to vomit again. The smell on this man was too unpleasant. She wanted to vomit just by smelling it. She resisted the urge to vomit and half-dragged, half-pushed, half-pulled, and half-coaxed Huijianyao into the bathtub. She turned on the water and began to turn on the water without testing the temperature. If he was cold, so be it. Let him die of cold. Let's see if he dares to be so drunk next time. Although she thought that, her heart softened in the end. As she took off Huijianyao's clothes, she tested the temperature of the water. Huijianyao was also cooperative. He raised his hands and feet when he was told to. Su Qingsang spent a long time and finally washed Huijianyao clean. She brought him a bath towel and asked him to get up, but the guy didn't move as if he was asleep. Su Qingsang was so angry that she almost laughed. She turned off the water first and ignored this person. She tidied up the bathroom. After cleaning up, she turned back to look at Huijianyao. Huijianyao, if you want to sleep in this bathtub, I'm leaving. If you want to go back to bed, then get up. There was no response, so Su Qingsang had to pull him again. Fortunately, this time he was more cooperative. She casually wiped his body dry and wrapped him in the bath towel. After Su Qingsang was done, she was so tired that she was about to collapse. She didn't care that her body was still wet. She casually took off her clothes and fell asleep. Su Qingsang was almost late when she went to the hospital. She was so sleepy that she couldn't get up after being tormented by Huijianyao for most of the night. When she finally got up, she realized that she was going to be late. She didn't even have time to eat breakfast. She rushed to the department and saw that Director Sun Huya was already there. She had an outpatient clinic today and a meeting in the department later. After the outpatient clinic, Su Qingsang only heard about something when she was at the meeting. Sun Huya had already reached the age of retirement. Although the hospital would hire her again, if she retired, the director of the obstetrics and gynecology department might be the deputy director, Shen Lingyun. It might also be the deputy director, Yang Lu. During dinner, Lance pulled Su Qingsang aside and started gossiping. Tell me, now that Director Sun has retired, will it be Deputy Director Shin or Deputy Director Yang who will take over? Su Qingsang looked at her gossipy face and couldn't help but laugh. No matter who goes up, it won't be us. That's not necessarily true. Ling Fei moved closer and whispered, have you ever thought about it? No matter who was promoted, the position of Deputy Chief Physician would be vacant. Wouldn't everyone have a chance then? Su Qingsang paused for a moment, then quickly shook her head. I don't want to think about it. After all, my seniority is not enough. I don't have enough seniority, but I have the ability to make up for it. Ling Fei blinked. Did you forget about your surgery last month? It was so difficult, but you still managed to overcome it. In my opinion, although you don't have enough seniority, you can still fight for it. Su Qingsang smiled and looked at Ling Fei. You can do it too. Do you want to give it a try? I really want to fight for it. Ling Fei didn't conceal her ambition in the slightest. But I admit that I'm not as good as you in terms of talent. These are the words of Director Sunday. Ling Fei had a good relationship with Su Qingsang, so she made a serious suggestion. Qingsang, I'm serious. You've been in this hospital for more than half a year now. You really don't have enough seniority. But even if you don't have enough seniority this year, it doesn't mean next year. Your professional skills are there. I think you can fight for it. Get the position of deputy chief physician in at least 3 years. It's not impossible. Su Qingsang had picked up a piece of fish to eat, but the fishy smell made her a little uncomfortable. She put down her chopsticks. I don't dare to think about 3 years. 5 years. I'll give myself a deadline of 5 years. I knew it. Ling Fei smiled and blinked at Su Qingsang. Good luck. I have high hopes for you. Su Qingsang put aside the feeling of wanting to vomit because of her words. She began to think seriously. Perhaps 3 years was not impossible. She didn't have enough seniority, but she could improve her professional skills. It wasn't impossible. Su Qingsang took this matter to heart. She was still very grateful for Ling Fei's encouragement. Thank you for your kind words. With that in mind, Su Qingsang forgot about the fact that she was not feeling well. After becoming a doctor, from assistant doctor to attending physician, to deputy chief physician to chief physician, step by step, Su Qingsang didn't have much ambition, but this kind of promotion process represented an affirmation of her ability. It was worth a gamble. Hua Jinyao went home early that day and found Su Qingsang in the study. Auntie Yu was cooking in the kitchen. Su Qingsang didn't run to the kitchen to see if there was anything she needed help like before. When he woke up this morning, he realized that he seemed to have gone overboard yesterday. He drank too much and was really drunk. He had a rough impression of what happened after that. Before he got drunk, he asked Yang Wenchang to send him home. What happened after that was only a shadow. He knocked on the door of the study, but there was no response. He gently pushed the door open. Su Qingsang was sitting behind the desk. In addition to the notebook in front of her, there was a pile of documents and books beside her. Wife. He took a few steps forward and called again, but found that Su Qingsang didn't respond. Was she angry? Hua Jinyao continued to walk forward. Su Qingsang didn't notice him at all. She stared at the documents in front of her and said softly, "The early stage of cervical cancer and, wife." Was she really going to ignore him? Was she angry? Su Qingsang looked at the 2 papers in her hand. Some of them were consistent while others were not. Wife. A pair of big hands suddenly appeared on her waist. Su Qingsang was shocked. She turned around and glared at Hua Jinyao. What are you doing? Wife. Don't be angry. Hua Jinyao took the initiative to admit his mistake. It was my fault yesterday. I shouldn't have been so drunk. Let go of me. She had just thought of a key point and was about to write it down. She went to pull his hand, but Hua Jinyao tightened his grip. Wife, don't be angry. I promise there won't be a next time. Hua Jinyao's hands were on her waist, and now he was tightening again. Su Qingsang felt a little uncomfortable in her stomach. Hua Jinyao let go. Did he know that he had interrupted her train of thought? No. Hua Jinyao was thick-skinned enough. He didn't forget how drunk he was yesterday. Wife, don't be angry. He tightened his arms, and Su Qingsang felt even more uncomfortable. The feeling of nausea came one after another. She couldn't help but push Hua Jinyao away and quickly headed for the bathroom. Hua Jinyao stood there, completely stunned. What was going on? Why was she so angry? He chased Su Qingsang into the bathroom. She hadn't had dinner yet, so she couldn't vomit anything. Wife, was it necessary? Was she so angry that she wanted to vomit whenever he was near her? Su Qingsang really felt uncomfortable. The feeling of vomiting made her very uncomfortable, but she couldn't vomit anything. When he finally calmed down, he patted his chest. Hua Jinyao moved closer again. As soon as he raised his hand, Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. Don't come over. If he hadn't strangled her just now, she wouldn't have felt like vomiting. Wife, it was the first time Hu Jiniao saw Su Qingsang look at him with such an ugly expression. I really know I was wrong. Don't be angry. As he spoke, his hands circled her waist again. Afraid that she would ignore him, he was very nervous. Speaking of which, you can't blame me yesterday. It's all that kid Li Junxing's fault. He's too bad. He was the one who urged the others to force me to drink. I'm telling you, next time he does this, I'll beat him up. Before Su Qingsang could respond, his hands strangled her, and her stomach began to feel uncomfortable again. She pushed Hu Jiniao away and went to vomit again. This reaction was a big blow to Hu Jiniao. He looked at Su Qingsang with a sad face. Wife, you don't have to do this, do you? Didn't he just drink a little? Why did he have such a big reaction when it came to Su Qingsang? If he remembered correctly, she seemed to have vomited when she smelled the alcohol on him yesterday. Su Qingsang didn't have time to pay attention to him. The nausea had just been suppressed with great difficulty, but now it was even more uncomfortable. She lay there and felt that she was about to vomit. Her face was pale and in pain. Wife, shut up. She was already uncomfortable, and hearing it made her even more annoyed. Hu Jiniao, who had never been treated so coldly, immediately became listless. This time, Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable for a long time. It wasn't until 10 minutes later that she finally felt better. After rinsing her mouth, she stood up. Seeing Hu Jiniao behind her, she felt extremely annoyed. This was the first time she felt this way. Can you stay away from me? Wife, I feel like vomiting whenever you get close to me. Su Qingsang had vomited 2 or 3 times. She really didn't want to suffer anymore. Hu Jiniao looked at her and took a step forward. Su Qingsang quickly raised her hand. Don't come over. She finally didn't want to vomit. Su Qingsang patted her chest and heard Auntie Yu calling for food. Wash your hands and eat. After saying this, she walked past him to the dining room. When she walked past him, she deliberately turned her body sideways. Wife, Hu Jiniao was hurt by Su Qingsang's actions. Now he hated Li Junxing and the others. After the hatred, he felt wronged. He only got drunk once. Did it have to be so exaggerated? He had taken a shower yesterday, and there was no smell of alcohol on him today. Okay? Su Qingsang went to the dining room. Auntie Yu had already brought the dishes to the table and was very considerate to serve them a bowl of soup. Hu Jiniao sat down next to Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang, who was about to drink the soup, suddenly couldn't sit still when she smelled the chicken soup. She stood up abruptly and rushed to the bathroom again. This time, the grievance on Hu Jiniao's face couldn't be tolerated. He subconsciously smelled the smell on his body. It didn't stink. It didn't smell like alcohol either. Why did Su Qingsang treat him like this? Did she do it on purpose? Just because he got drunk once? Why did he feel even more wronged than Doi? Chapter 626. Su Qingsang sat down again. She was really weak. She had vomited for so long and felt terrible. Just as she was about to eat, Hu Jiniao pushed the bowl in front of her. Su Qingsang couldn't stand the smell again. Hu Jiniao's expression seemed to be even more resentful when he saw her reaction. Honey, you can't be like this, right? Su Qingsang glanced at him with a puzzled look. She sat up straight. The smell of the chicken soup was a little farther away from her. She felt better. She met Hu Jiniao's gaze and found that the way he looked at her was, "What's wrong with you?" She had vomited a few times, and when she finally recovered, all she wanted was to eat quietly. Honey, Hu Jiniao lost all confidence. I really know I was wrong. I promise, I won't get drunk again next time. Su Qingsang blinked. After thinking about her path of advancement today, she planned to work hard. Not only did she rush to finish the previous paper, but she also planned to work hard on some materials and books that she would only start reading next month. Therefore, she really didn't take Hu Jiniao's apology to heart. Now that he mentioned it, she remembered. What happened to you yesterday? Why did you drink so much? She wasn't completely angry, but she was a little annoyed that he didn't know how to take care of her body. Honey, Hu Jiniao quickly explained. You really can't blame me. It's that Li Junxing. He hurt me. He forced me to drink. Su Qingsang's body was still a little uncomfortable. She still felt uncomfortable when she thought of the smell of alcohol on Hu Jiniao's body yesterday. He forced you to drink and you drank? Don't you know that drinking too much is bad for your liver? Honey, I was wrong. All right. He said that he was wrong, but there was no regret in his eyes. He said it straightforwardly, but there was no regret in his eyes. Don't do it again. Honey, I promise. There won't be a next time. After Hu Jiniao said that, he picked up the bowl of soup and put it in front of Su Qingsang. Honey, hurry up and eat. The soup is getting cold. Su Qingsang picked up the bowl of soup and was about to drink it. The feeling of nausea came again. But this time, she knew that she had nothing to vomit. She waved her hand and tilted her face to the side. Her pale face was filled with nausea and discomfort. Hu Jiniao pulled a long face. Wife? Su Qingsang blinked her eyes. After such a long night, she had lost her appetite. She had always been in good health and had never felt as nauseous as she did now. She had a faint guess in her heart. But before she could confirm it, she couldn't guarantee anything. Patting her chest, she recovered from the uncomfortable situation and glanced at Hu Jiniao. Let's eat. He pushed the bowl of chicken soup away from him. He felt better when he couldn't smell anything. Honey, Hu Jiniao felt really wronged. Don't be angry, okay? I'm not angry, Su Qingsang said. She could roughly guess what kind of state she was in. She didn't have time to argue with Hu Jiniao. Let's eat. Then have a bowl of soup first. Hu Jiniao was about to push the soup to Su Qingsang, but she quickly raised her hand and said, I don't want the soup. Wasn't she still looking down on him? Su Qingsang glared at him. She really didn't have any temper now. Let's eat. She served herself a bowl of rice, although she still didn't want to eat. But if her guess was right, this wasn't the time for her to be willful. Honey, was she really okay? Her stomach was very uncomfortable, and every bite made her feel sick. This made her look very ugly. Hu Jiniao drank the soup while looking at Su Qingsang's face. He had a feeling that a storm was coming. Su Qingsang forced herself to eat a bowl of rice. She really couldn't eat anymore. She hurriedly put down the bowl and wanted to vomit again. Hu Jiniao saw that she didn't eat much at all. She ate less than half of her usual amount. He stood up as well. Honey? As soon as he got close, Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. The feeling of vomiting couldn't be suppressed at all. She hurriedly ran to the bathroom and vomited as much as she had eaten just now. Hu Jiniao's eyes widened as he looked at Su Qingsang's behavior. He was completely dumbfounded. What was going on? After Su Qingsang finished vomiting, she had no appetite to eat anymore. She looked at Hu Jiniao and wasn't in the mood to pay attention to him. After nearly an hour of torment, her legs were now weak. As an obstetrician and gynecologist, she knew that if her guess was true, then these reactions were normal. However, she was a little distressed. According to the month, it was still early. She was already torturing herself like this. She didn't know what would happen in the future. Honey? Qingsang? Hu Jiniao followed behind Su Qingsang and watched her rinse her mouth before going to the room. He didn't do anything else and directly lay down on the bed. Go away. She hadn't recovered from the discomfort yet. If he came over again, she couldn't guarantee that she would vomit all over him. Honey. Hu Jiniao really felt wronged to the extreme. What on earth do you want to do to not be angry? I said go away. Su Qingsang didn't want to lose her temper, but she was a little annoyed. Before, she thought that it would be good to have a child. But now that she might really have one, she had a headache. She had seen many pregnant women with severe morning sickness. If she was also that kind, how would she spend the next few months? Honey? Her brows were furrowed so tightly that a mosquito could be squeezed to death. Hu Jiniao reached out to smooth it for her. She had vomited like that. How could he not be worried? Do you have nothing to do? Su Qingsang was extremely uncomfortable. She really didn't want to hear Hu Jiniao apologize, promise, or say that he was drunk yesterday. I want to rest for a while. Can you go and clean up the bowls outside? I'm worried about you. Hu Jingyao looked at her and reached out to touch her forehead. Su Qingsang avoided his hand. I'm fine. I just want to sleep for a while. Can you go out now? Don't disturb me and let me sleep for a while? Was he being despised? Hu Jingyao watched Su Qingsang turn over and lie down, completely ignoring him. He felt like he had suffered a huge blow in his heart. This kind of blow lasted until he was about to sleep at night. Su Qingsang rested for a while and felt a little more comfortable. She even got up and made herself a bowl of noodles. After eating the noodles, she went to the study to sort out the rest of the documents. When she returned to the room, she found that Hu Jinyao's expression was still very sad. Su Qingsang ignored him. It was rare that she didn't feel nauseous or uncomfortable. She went to take a shower and prepared to go to bed early. Tomorrow, she would go to the hospital for a checkup. She would see how the situation was. If she really had a child, she would have to be more careful in the first few months. During this period of time, she had been focusing on her thesis. During the following exams, she occasionally felt tired and thought that she was tired. She didn't expect that it might be because she was pregnant. She was in a good mood. When she lay down again, she took out her phone and scrolled through Weibo. At that moment, Hu Jinyao's hand reached over. Su Qingsang slapped his hand away without thinking. Don't move. Yesterday was really my fault. Honey, I also promised. Can you not ignore me? Hu Jinyao, stop it. Honey. Hu Jinyao was really going crazy. Can you just tell me how long you're going to be angry for? Su Qingsang looked at his pitiful look and burst into laughter. She was a little helpless. All right, I'll just be angry for today. If there's anything else, we'll talk about it tomorrow. He would talk about it after she finished the checkup and knew the results. Huh? Hu Jinyao was dumbfounded. Su Qingsang was afraid that he would not take it seriously, so she looked at him with a serious face. Hu Jinyao, I'm really not in the mood today, so please stay away from me. If he put his hand on her waist again, she was afraid that she would vomit again. Honey, Hu Jinyao was really going to reach out. I just want to hug you. I won't do anything bad. Can't I? No. Su Qingsang was very straightforward. If you hug me, I will feel like vomiting. If he hadn't squeezed her stomach just now, she wouldn't have had such a big reaction. Hu Jinyao's face immediately darkened. Looking at Su Qingsang, who had already closed her eyes and started to sleep, he felt that his heart was shrouded by a large dark cloud. He had only been drunk once, and she had to do this to him? Wasn't this punishment too severe? Honey, you don't have to go that far, do you? Can't I just hug you to sleep? No. Honey, don't be noisy. If you continue to be noisy, you can sleep on the sofa or in the guest room. Su Qingsang reached out a finger to stop him from approaching. Or, do you want to sleep on the sofa? I'll sleep here. Hu Jinyao stepped back a little and fell asleep unwillingly. It was rare for Su Qingsang to sleep so soundly. When she woke up in the morning, she was in good spirits. When she brushed her teeth, she felt a little nauseous, but she forced herself to suppress it. She was a doctor herself, so she knew what was best for her body. When she went outside, Hu Jinyao was already gone. She didn't know if he had gone to work. Su Qingsang didn't have time to care about him now. She was in a hurry to go to the hospital for a checkup. She also needed to start taking extra folic acid and calcium. Su Qingsang thought about some things to take note of in the early stages of pregnancy, then went to the hospital. First, she took out the pregnancy test paper and checked it. The 2 bars on it showed that she was indeed pregnant. She began to recall when she last had her period. If she remembered correctly, it seemed that she had only come once after coming back from Sea City. After that, she hadn't come again for more than a month. According to this calculation, she was about 7 to 8 weeks pregnant. The specific situation would be known after she took the ultrasound. The colleague on duty in the ultrasound room at noon was a new girl. Not long after she arrived, Su Qingsang lay on it and waited for the image to appear on the screen. Dr. Su, you're pregnant. The little girl looked even more excited than Su Qingsang. 8 weeks of intrauterine pregnancy. The fetal heart is normal. Dr. Su, your baby is very healthy. Su Qingsang smiled. The little girl was surprised and pointed in the direction of the screen. Dr. Su, look at this. What? Su Qingsang's gaze followed the screen. The little girl looked excited. Are there 2 embryonic sacs? Why do I think there are 2 fetal sacs? Su Qingsang blinked and sat up. She naturally understood what 2 fetal sacs meant. Dr. Su, you're so lucky. The little girl's eyes lit up. You're actually pregnant with twins. Su Qingsang knew that she was pregnant yesterday, but now that she suddenly found out that she was pregnant with twins, she still couldn't calm down. How was that possible? Whether it was her family or Hua Jinyao's side, there seemed to be no precedent of twins. No, the aunt from Hua Jinyao's Grey-Tant's family gave birth to a pair of twins. Su Qingsang sat up and placed her hand on her abdomen. Felt very magical. She had delivered many women and examined many pregnant women's bodies. She had also delivered twins herself. However, she didn't expect that one day she would be pregnant with twins. It was really magical. Congratulations. Congratulations. Dr. Su, you're so lucky. The little girl congratulated her again. Su Qingsang was a little embarrassed, but she felt more happy. Thank you. Dr. Su, when the baby is born, you have to treat us to a meal. Definitely. Su Qingsang got up and wanted to leave. Looking at the little girl, she instructed, Dr. Chun, can you not tell me about my pregnancy for the time being? It's a secret, isn't it? You can't tell me before 3 months. I know. The little girl smiled and nodded. Su Qingsang smiled at her gratefully. Then, she went back to her office. She didn't have an outpatient clinic this morning. However, there was a minor surgery in the afternoon. Su Qingsang placed her hand on her abdomen. She began to think about whether she should take leave to rest now or work until the 3rd trimester. She wasn't a very delicate woman. As an obstetrician and gynecologist, her body was much healthier and stronger than that of ordinary women. She still wanted to rise up. She still had to submit the thesis in her hand, and there was also the matter of the certification. Su Qingsang didn't think for too long. When the next pregnant woman who was suddenly sent in needed treatment, she had already made up her mind. She continued to work. When she changed into her surgical gown, she looked at her abdomen. Baby, I think you will understand your mother's work and stay in my stomach, right? Su Qingsang didn't have much time to think about other problems. There was a fire today, and several burn patients were sent over. One of them was a pregnant woman. When she was sent over, the situation was very critical. Su Qingsang, Sun Huya, and Shin Lingyun threw themselves into the rescue of the pregnant woman. The degree of burns on the pregnant woman was as high as 30%. However, the child was less than 6 months old. The pregnant woman was very strong. She was afraid that she would hurt the child, so she refused to be anesthetized. Su Qingsang and Sun Huya couldn't bear to do it. Fortunately, the pregnant woman fainted on her own. Only then were they able to successfully carry out the treatment. The whole process lasted for nearly 5 hours. When Su Qingsang came out of the operating room, the sky had already darkened. She hadn't eaten anything since noon. After coming out of the hospital, Su Qingsang felt tired again. She was really tired. Anyone would feel tired after standing on the operating table for 4 to 5 hours. Not to mention that she was pregnant. Now that she was tired and hungry, she began to think that maybe she should eat something appetizer tonight. Also, she thought about telling Hua Jinyao the news. What would his reaction be if he knew? Would he be happy? Or excited? Or would he be something else that she couldn't think of? She was still thinking about how to say it to be more surprising. But as soon as she walked out of the hospital, she was shocked. When she saw the man standing on the side of the road in front of the hospital, with an extremely flashy red sports car parked behind him and a large bouquet of red roses in his hand, Su Qingsang thought that her eyes were playing tricks on her. Hua Jinyao took a few steps forward and walked in front of Su Qingsang. He handed the flowers in his hand to her. Honey, this is for you. Su Qingsang looked at the large bouquet of roses, then at Hua Jinyao. She blinked. What day is it today? Honey. Hu Jingyao smiled and walked forward, gently putting his arm around her shoulder. It's not a special day. I just wanted to give you flowers. There seemed to be at least 99 roses in the large bouquet. In the middle was a heart shape made of pink roses. It was beautiful, very beautiful. However, honey, I asked Yang Wanchang to make a reservation. Let's go out for dinner. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao, and in the end, she was half pulled and half hugged by him into his car. After getting into the car, Su Qingsang looked at the interior of the car and turned to Hu Jinyao. Is this a new car? At least she hadn't seen this car in the Hua family's garage. Yes, I just bought it. Do you like it? Honey, it's okay. She didn't have any special requirements for cars, and the car she was driving now was quite good. It's for you. Such generosity made Su Qingsang lean back. Hu Jinyao, what's wrong with you today? It's nothing. I just suddenly realized that I should treat you better, honey. Su Qingsang looked at him suspiciously. The first thought that came to her mind was, did he know that she was pregnant? But his reaction didn't seem like it. If Hu Jinyao knew, how could he be so calm? The car stopped in front of a very famous building. Before they entered the door, a waiter came over to show them the way. Su Qingsang and Hu Jinyao entered the building and went straight to the top floor. It was located in the center of Rong City. From this angle, they could see the nearby streets clearly. Among them were the places that Su Qingsang and Li Qianxue had been to when they came to Rong City. They walked to a seat by the window, and Hu Jinyao very considerately pulled out a chair for Su Qingsang. Honey, sit down. Su Qingsang became more and more suspicious of his attentive behavior. She watched as Hu Jinyao sat down opposite her and called for the waiter. A bottle of wine. As soon as he said the word wine, Hu Jinyao remembered why he had been ignored by Su Qingsang for the whole night. He immediately changed his words. Juice, juice. You can't drink now. His actions confirmed Su Qingsang's guess. She couldn't help but wonder if the newcomer had sold her out. The last time she was taken away by the police, Hu Jinyao was extremely anxious. Later, he went to the hospital and asked for the phone numbers of all her colleagues in the hospital. He also gave them a copy of his phone numbers. This meant that if anything happened to Su Qingsang in the future, they could call him immediately. Thinking of this, she felt that it was meaningless at all. She blamed the new girl in her heart. Shouldn't it be better for her to tell Hu Jinyao about this kind of thing? You know all about it? Hu Jinyao was ordering dishes. Seeing Su Qingsang's expression, he nodded. How could he not know? One drink and he was given the cold shoulder for a whole day. If he drank again, he might not be able to go to bed for a week. I know, of course I know. He had promised yesterday, but Su Qingsang still wouldn't let him go. For the first time, Hu Jinyao realized that Su Qingsang could be petty. Do you know half of it or all of it? If he knew that she was pregnant, did he know that she was pregnant with twins? Su Qingsang's expression was a little strange. If he knew everything, his reaction was really too calm. Of course I know everything. Hu Jinyao wanted to surrender. Honey, can we not talk about this for now? Su Qingsang's lips were pursed into a straight line. The joy of being pregnant with twins was gone. Looking at Hu Jinyao's reaction, she suddenly thought of something. In the past year or so, Hu Jinyao had almost always taken precautions. And those few times were also because she had repeatedly requested for him to do so. Not to mention the last time she lost control on the sofa, Hu Jinyao refused to give her a chance again. An extremely terrifying thought flashed through her mind. Hu Jinyao did this today. Could it be that he didn't want this child at all? Her expression was too serious, and Hu Jinyao thought that she was still angry. He quickly finished ordering and poured Su Qingsang a glass of juice. All right, honey. If you have anything to say, let's talk after dinner. Okay? Su Qingsang glared at Hu Jinyao. Talk after dinner? Hu Jinyao, just say it now. What are you thinking? What do you mean? What do you think about this matter? Hu Jinyao's expression was a little strange. It wasn't over yet? Honey, haven't I already made my stance clear? Make it clear. Do you want it or not? Want what? Don't want what? Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang's serious face. Thinking of what she said yesterday about letting him sleep on the sofa, he quickly shook his head. No, of course not. He already knew his mistake. Of course, he couldn't accept such an inhumane punishment. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao for a long time and finally understood. The roses, the sports car, and today's meal were all preludes. So that he didn't want children. She was so angry that she stood up in a hurry. Honey? Hu Jinyao was shocked by her action. What are you doing? Hu Jinyao. Su Qingsang had always thought that he didn't want children, but she didn't expect Hu Jinyao to have such an attitude. Since you don't want them, then I have nothing to say to you. No, honey, you? Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, who was about to leave, and quickly stood in front of her. Don't want them? What them? Children. Su Qingsang was a little annoyed at this moment. For a moment, she didn't realize that the two of them were talking about the same thing. Since you don't want children, then what else do I have to say to you? Children. Hu Jinyao was confused. What children? Hu Jinyao. Is there any point in pretending to be stupid when you already know? Su Qingsang took out the ultrasound report from her bag. Children are children. A child for both of us. Didn't you say you didn't want them? Why are you still pretending? No, wait a minute. Hu Jinyao was stunned. He looked at the ultrasound report and blinked. 8 weeks pregnant? Hu Jinyao's eyes widened as he read the words over and over again. When he saw the cold expression on Su Qingsang's face, he almost jumped up. You're pregnant? Without waiting for Su Qingsang to speak, he took a step forward and put his hand on her shoulder. Chapter 6:27. Hu Jinyao's reaction was a little big. Su Qingsang frowned. She began to feel that something was wrong. You're pregnant. Oh my God. Hu Jinyao unconsciously tightened his grip. He looked at Su Qingsang with shock and disbelief in his eyes. Honey, you're pregnant? Qingsang, you're pregnant. 8 weeks, how long is 8 weeks? Did you just find out today? Or did you already know? Su Qingsang crossed her arms in front of her chest. She couldn't understand Hu Jinyao's incoherent reaction. I just found out today. Hu Jinyao blinked and looked at the words, 8 weeks pregnant. He suddenly picked Su Qingsang up and spun her around. Although it was past dinner time, there were still many people in the restaurant. Feeling the gazes of the people nearby, Su Qingsang quickly patted Hu Jinyao on the shoulder. Hu Jinyao, put me down. No. Hu Jinyao hugged Su Qingsang tightly and shook his head. I won't let go. Honey, you're pregnant. You're actually pregnant. Hu Jinyao, be careful. Put me down, do you hear me? This low shout made Hu Jinyao react. He put Su Qingsang down very gently. After letting go, he took a big step back and looked Su Qingsang up and down with obvious surprise in his eyes. I'm sorry. I'm so happy. As he spoke, he leaned over and kissed Su Qingsang on the lips. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jinyao's actions and blinked. Hu Jinyao, come. Sit down, honey. Hu Jinyao helped Su Qingsang sit down on the chair, as if he was treating a porcelain doll. Su Qingsang sat down and wanted to say something, but Hu Jinyao didn't give her a chance. Honey, you're pregnant? 2 months? Tell me, what should I pay attention to? Hu Jinyao. She didn't understand his reaction. Didn't he know before? No, wait a minute. Hu Jinyao took out his phone and turned on the recording function. He looked at Su Qingsang and said, Come, tell me, I'll record it. Su Qingsang was a little speechless. Was such a silly husband his? Hu Jinyao, tell me, I'm listening. Su Qingsang turned off his phone and put it aside. She stared at Hu Jinyao's face with her clear eyes. You drove a sports car and gave me roses today. Isn't it because you know that I'm pregnant? I don't know. Hu Jinyao slapped his forehead. He seemed to realize that Su Qingsang had misunderstood him. Honey, how can you think of me like that? Can't I be nice to you for no reason? Unaccountably solicitous. She didn't say the second half of the sentence, but she believed that Hu Jinyao understood. Wife? Su Qingsang lowered her head. She had been too petty today. You said no just now. I said I don't want to sleep on the sofa. Hu Jiniao took her hand and said sincerely, Honey, I know I was wrong about getting drunk the day before yesterday. Can't you forgive me just this once? Su Qingsang nodded. She finally understood that she had made a mistake. Of course, Hu Jiniao wasn't much better. So today, you brought me a sports car, roses, and a candlelight dinner just to apologize for getting drunk? Honey, don't make it sound so bad. Didn't I already apologize yesterday? Can't you just let me treat you well? His eyes were quite sincere. Su Qingsang couldn't help but laugh. Looking at him, who was half squatting beside her, she gently patted him. Get up and sit down. Why are you squatting here? There were still others here. Honey. Hu Jiniao finally calmed down from the excitement he had just experienced. He looked at Su Qingsang and scratched his head. Are you really pregnant? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded. I got it after I came back from Lin City. They didn't use protection twice. It was probably at that time. I'm going to be a father? Yes. Su Qingsang didn't know if it was her imagination, but she felt that Hu Jiniao was a little silly today. Hu Jiniao's next move was even more silly. He stared at her stomach and carefully reached out his hand. Can I touch it? Su Qingsang found it a little funny. In principle, it's not even the size of an egg. You can't feel anything even if you touch it. I know. I just want to touch it. Hu Jiniao rubbed his hands nervously with a very sincere expression. He raised his hands and gently placed them on Su Qingsang's stomach. It was still flat, and there was nothing there. He looked up at Su Qingsang. That's it? Eft. This time, Su Qingsang really couldn't help it. Hu Jiniao, that's enough. It hasn't even been 2 months. Hu Jiniao didn't withdraw his hand. He pressed his face against Su Qingsang's stomach. There was no awkwardness or embarrassment on his face because of Su Qingsang's mockery. I don't care. I think he should know. He moved back a little and looked at Su Qingsang's stomach very seriously. Hey, hello. I'm your father. Su Qingsang looked at his silly face and wanted to laugh, but she also wanted to cry. She had always thought that he didn't like children, but she didn't expect his reaction to make her feel very warm and a little touched. There was no response, so Hu Jiniao said it again. Hello, baby. I'm your father. So silly. Su Qingsang pinched his nose and didn't forget to correct the mistake in his words. It's not you, it's you guys. You guys? Hu Jiniao looked up at her with a blank expression. What you guys? It's you guys. Didn't he see it just now? Su Qingsang picked up the checklist and pointed at one of the lines. Do you see it? 2 fetal sacs. What do you mean? Hu Jiniao didn't understand. Su Qingsang was now very sure that Hu Jiniao was dumbfounded by the surprise of becoming a father. His IQ was completely off the charts. Dear Mr. Hua, it's not you, it's you guys. That means here it's not 1, it's 2. 2. Hu Jiniao was like a repeater. Yes, 2. Wife. Hu Jiniao. Su Qingsang looked at his dumbfounded expression and wondered if she should take a picture of him like this. And then take it out to laugh at him a few years later? Don't you understand? Twins. 2. Twins? Hu Jiniao's mouth was wide open. He had only seen 8 weeks of pregnancy just now, so he hadn't had time to digest Su Qingsang's words. He looked at Su Qingsang, then at the checklist, and then at Su Qingsang's stomach. He suddenly took a big step back. Ah, you mean wife, you mean... He pointed at Su Qingsang's stomach, as if he had seen something strange. So silly. Su Qingsang looked at Hu Jiniao's silly expression, lowered her head, and touched her stomach. Babies, you're so pitiful. Your father has already become silly. Hu Jiniao had lived for more than 30 years, and he had never lost control like this. He was completely incoherent at this point. He raised his hands with a very complicated expression. He muttered, "Oh my God, oh my God." He paced back and forth on the spot. That movement was so big that it had already attracted the attention of the other people in the restaurant. Su Qingsang was extremely embarrassed by his actions. She got up, grabbed his hand, dragged him to sit down beside her, and held his body down. Hu Jiniao, that's enough. Calm down. How can I calm down? Hu Jiniao felt his heart beating fast. Twins? Wife, you have twins here? Oh my God. I'm actually going to have 2 children. Oh my God. He couldn't calm down at all. He stood up. Su Qingsang pressed his body back down, and he stood up again. He suddenly picked up the phone on the table. Before Su Qingsang could stop him, his phone had already been unplugged. Uncle Chang? Let Grandpa answer the phone. Grandpa is upstairs? Mom? It's me. Yes. Qingsang is pregnant. Yes. You're going to be a grandmother. Grandpa is going to be a great-grandfather. Yes. Qingsang is pregnant. Yes. Pregnant. Mom, let me tell you, Qingsang is pregnant with twins. You know about twins, right? Our family has never had twins. Qingsang is pregnant. His voice wasn't loud, but after the commotion just now, many people nearby looked over. Su Qingsang covered her face, feeling that she had no face to look at other people. She looked at Hu Jiniao like a repeater. She kept repeating those 2 sentences. Qingsang is pregnant. His twins. After hanging up the phone with the Hu family, Hu Jiniao felt that it wasn't enough, so he began to call other people. Junxing? I'll tell you. My wife is pregnant. Yes. Qingsang is pregnant. Twins. Ha 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 ha. Twins. You know, right? My wife is pregnant with twins. Mohun? I'll tell you. Qingsang is pregnant. Qingsang, yes, my wife. Ha 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 ha. Sorry, let me laugh for a while. I'm so happy. Yes. She is pregnant. Yes. I'm going to be a father. I'm going to be a father of 2 children. Ha 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 ha. I'm amazing, right? Yes. That's it. My wife is pregnant with twins. Ha 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 ha. Xianyun? Ha 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 ha. I'm so happy. Let me tell you a piece of good news. Xianyang. Xianyang, let me tell you. Ha 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 ha. I can't. I'm too happy. Su Qingsang buried her face in the table and felt the gazes from all directions. She decided that she would never come to this restaurant again. Finally, Hu Jiniao finished making the phone call and finished showing off. He couldn't hide the pride on his face. To him, the gazes around him weren't worth mentioning at all. They were all jealous. These people were jealous. Wife, I'm so happy. Su Qingsang didn't want to talk to him anymore. The dishes had already been served. She glanced at Hu Jiniao and asked, Are you eating? Of course. Hu Jiniao put his phone aside. I'll call after I finish eating. Seeing the hidden disdain in Su Qingsang's eyes, he changed the topic. Wife, let's eat. Well, right. What do you need to eat at this time? Nutritious? Or light? There's nothing here that you can't eat, right? If there is, you have to tell me. Hu Jiniao. Su Qingsang interrupted his chatter. Can I make a request? Go ahead. He would agree even if it was 10, let alone 1. Now, shut up and let me eat in peace. Can I? Hu Jiniao blinked and was about to speak when Su Qingsang raised her index finger. Quiet. I want to eat. Hu Jiniao, who was despised by his wife, wasn't angry at all. He supported his chin with one hand and watched Su Qingsang eat. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable under his gaze. What are you doing? Wife, I find you so beautiful. Thank you, I got it. Are you ready to eat? Hu Jiniao began to eat, but as soon as he picked up the knife and fork, he remembered something else. Wife, can you eat Western food? This salad seems to be cold. Do you want me to help you? Hu Jiniao, be quiet. Hu Jiniao cut a piece of steak and thought of something else. Wife, do you think they will fight in your stomach? Hu Jiniao, do you want me to remind you that they are still fetal sac? Fight? Did he think she was pregnant with Neza? Hu Jiniao swallowed the steak and thought of another thing. Wife, do you think they are boys or girls? I don't know. Su Qingsang took a deep breath, raised her head, and glared at Hu Jiniao. Her eyes were as sharp as knives. Be quiet. Hu Jiniao felt wronged and shut up, but he had other questions to ask. As soon as his lips moved, Su Qingsang's sharp eyes flew over again. He had no choice but to lower his head and continue eating. If someone didn't know what was going on, they would think that she was bullying him. Su Qingsong's hand that was holding the knife and fork tightened, and she secretly reminded herself, "Don't be angry, please don't be angry. You are pregnant. You have to be happy." However, she was so stimulated by Hua Jinyao's silly actions that she forgot about the morning sickness. The meal went smoothly. At least she didn't feel nauseous. After the meal, when Hua Jinyao went to pay the bill, he was told that it was free. The owner of the restaurant knew Hua Jinyao. He had made such a big move just now, so the owner knew. "Congratulations, Hua Xiao. Today's meal is on me. Come to our restaurant next time if you have the chance." "Thank you. I'll come again next time." Hua Jinyao was in a good mood. He put his arm around her and walked outside. From the moment they got into the car, the smile on Hua Jinyao's face never disappeared. Su Qingsang couldn't stand his silly look. She turned her face to look at the night view of Rong City outside the car window and chose not to look at him. She found that Hua Jinyao was driving very slowly. She couldn't help but glance at him. Yes, less than 20 yards. "Hua Jinyao, you're driving a sports car, aren't you?" "I know." The corners of Hua Jinyao's lips curled up. "But I can't drive too fast now." Su Qingsang held her forehead and looked at the cars that overtook her one after another. From time to time, the drivers would glance at her as if she was a retard. She lowered her head and decided to play dead. Took them twice as long as usual to get home. As soon as Su Qingsang and Hua Jinyao got out of the elevator, they saw 3 people standing outside the elevator. Hua Mingguang, Lu Tongjia, and Old Master Hua. "Grandpa, Dad, Mom, Grandpa, Dad, Auntie." Su Qingsang was shocked by this lineup. She looked at the time. They rushed over almost as soon as Hua Jinyao called. "You're back?" Old Master Hua was the first to speak. When he spoke, he looked at Su Qingsong's stomach. Hua Mingguang and his wife were the same. However, Su Qingsang was holding a large bouquet of roses in her hand, which blocked their line of sight. Even so, Su Qingsang still felt uncomfortable. She couldn't help but glare at Hua Jinyao. It was all his fault, making such a big noise. Lu Tongjia looked at Su Qingsang and said in an unusually gentle tone, "How is it? Do you feel uncomfortable anywhere?" Su Qingsang shook her head. Hua Jinyao opened the door and let them in. The group of people entered the room. Lu Tongjia watched Hua Jinyao take the rose from Su Qingsang's hand and carefully help Su Qingsang sit down. Su Qingsang felt that it was an exaggeration and a little awkward. She was not used to Hua Jinyao's action when all the elders were present. However, Hua Jinyao didn't think so, and neither did Lu Tongjia. "How can we go out to eat? Isn't that unhygienic? Is Auntie Yu's cooking not good? How about I ask Aunt Zhou to come over and make soup for you every day?" No, Hua Mingguang objected. "Aunt Zhou's cooking is good, but she doesn't have a dietitian license. If you want me to hire a nutritionist." He hired another chef. "Come with it every day." "That's good." Old Master Hua agreed. "Hire a nutritionist and a chef. Oh right, assign a driver to Qingsang as well. Qingsang, you don't have to drive to work anymore." "Why would I still need to work?" Lu Tongjia looked at Su Qingsong's belly. "They have a lot of things to do in the hospital. In my opinion, don't go to work. Just stay at home." Yes. Hua Mingguang nodded. "That was a good idea. I think you should rest at home and move back. It'll be convenient for your mother to take care of you." Okay. Hua Jinyao listened to the elder's suggestions and felt that it was a good idea. "I don't have any experience taking care of pregnant women." "That's good." "That's right. Then it's decided." The 3 elders spoke one after another. However, Hua Jinyao seemed to agree with them. The corners of Su Qingsong's mouth twitched. While they were discussing enthusiastically, she spoke in a somewhat disappointing manner. "I'm sorry. I don't plan on not going to work. You can still stay at home." Lu Tongjia was halfway through her sentence when she suddenly turned to look at Su Qingsang. "What did you say?" "I said, I don't plan on not going to work." Su Qingsang was very persistent on this matter. "I'm in good health. There's nothing wrong with me. Besides, I'm a doctor. I know how to take care of myself. Also, if I don't go to work and stay at home every day, it might not be a good thing for the child's development. The three elders and Hu Jiniao were silent. They looked at each other and finally looked at Su Qingsang. Hu Jiniao's brows were tightly knitted. Qingsang, this isn't an ordinary pregnancy. You're pregnant with twins. I know. Our hospital has even delivered quintuplets before. Su Qingsang said. That pregnant woman didn't rest all the time. Of course, later on, because the belly was too big and there were too many fetuses, she had to be hospitalized. There was silence. Old Master Hu looked at Su Qingsang with a hint of disapproval in his eyes. Qingsang, I think Jiniao makes sense. I think what Jiniao said makes sense. This isn't an ordinary pregnancy. You're pregnant with twins. It's different. There's nothing different. It was just one more in her belly. To her, there was no difference. Grandpa, don't worry. I'm in good health. Besides, I'm an obstetrician and gynecologist myself. I'll take good care of myself. Don't worry. Su Qingsang was a very assertive person. Since she had already made up her mind, no one could persuade her. The elders looked at each other. They probably didn't expect Su Qingsang to be so determined. In the end, everyone looked at Hu Jiniao. Dad, Mom, Grandpa, it's getting late now. Why don't you go back and rest first? Why don't we talk tomorrow? Hu Jiniao wanted to persuade Su Qingsang after they grew up. However, Old Master Hua was hesitant. In his opinion, Su Qingsang naturally lived back in the old mansion. It was best if someone took care of her. In the end, Hu Jiniao finally succeeded in persuading the elders to let them go back first. After sending the elders away, Hu Jiniao turned around and saw that Su Qingsang was no longer in the living room. Hu Jiniao thought that she had gone back to her room, but in the end, he found her in the study. Honey? Hu Jiniao went up nervously. I heard that computers have radiation. You should stop working, right? The Earth has a large magnetic field, and it has radiation. Su Qingsang still had some papers to finish yesterday, and there were still some materials to sort out. Honey, Hu Jiniao squeezed into her chair and sat down with her. You're already pregnant. You don't have to work so hard. As for the thesis and the test, we can talk about it later. Hu Jiniao. Su Qingsang was squeezed to the point that there was no room for her. Hu Jiniao simply picked her up and let her sit on his lap. She patted his arm helplessly. First of all, I'm a doctor, and I'm an obstetrician. I know better than you what I can and can't do. Second of all, it's not even 3 months yet. As I said, it's only 2 fetal sacs. Even if they're a little older, the right amount of exercise will make it easier for me to give birth. Do you understand? So, please don't be so nervous. I'll say it again. I'm a doctor. After Su Qingsang finished speaking, she didn't have the patience to talk to him anymore. All right, you can go out now. Let me finish my work, okay? Hu Jiniao. Su Qingsang didn't expect that the whole hospital would know that she was pregnant the next day. Yesterday, Hu Jiniao had waited for her at the entrance of the hospital. Many people had seen it, and some had even taken photos and posted them on the hospital's internal forum. All the colleagues in the hospital knew that Su Qingsang was married well. Not to mention anything else, Hu Jiniao had come to the hospital a few times. He had been on TV and was a celebrity in Rong City. The moment he did that yesterday, the little girl in the ultrasound room started gossiping on the forum. Su Qingsang was pregnant, and they were twins. So, Hu Jiniao did that yesterday to celebrate his wife's pregnancy. When Su Qingsang entered the hospital, she received envious gazes from all her colleagues and endless blessings. It made her feel embarrassed. When she entered the office, Sun Huya also came over. She congratulated her repeatedly. She said that no obstetrician in the hospital had ever given birth to twins. She was the first. Su Qingsang felt like she was surrounded by people the whole day. That feeling was really not something she was used to. Surrounded by a group of colleagues to congratulate her, she took the initiative to treat them to dinner tonight. Chapter 628. In the cafe opposite the hospital, Su Qingsang and Su Chenghui sat face to face. Su Chenghui looked a little more haggard than 2 days ago. Su Qingsang didn't know why he asked her to come. She thought Su Chenghui had returned to Lin City. Dad? What can I do for you? These words were really quite polite. The other party was her father. Couldn't he come to her for no reason? Su Chenghui naturally heard it and looked a little embarrassed. Nothing. I have a plane ticket back to Lin City tomorrow, so I wanted to come and see you. Thank you. Su Chenghui looked at his daughter in front of him. Su Peijian looked like his mother, but Su Qingsang and Su Yusin looked like him. Su Yusin looked more like Li Qianxue. The shape of Su Qingsang's face was actually a bit like Li Qianxue's. He lowered his head and thought of what he had overheard when he entered the hospital. I heard that you're pregnant? Su Qingsang glanced at him. She didn't expect him to know about this. Yes, I'm pregnant. She didn't want to hide it. Since he already knew, there was nothing she couldn't say. It was a good thing anyway. Okay. Su Chenghui couldn't find anything else to say. When I went to your hospital just now, I heard your colleagues discussing it. I think they said it's twins? Yes. Good. That's great. Su Chenghui didn't know what else to say. I've never taken care of a pregnant woman before. I don't know what you need to eat or use at this time. You? Dad. I'm a doctor. Su Qingsang looked at his embarrassed look, but her mood didn't change. I know how to take care of myself. Don't worry. Su Chenghui nodded repeatedly. He thought of another thing. Does your mother know you're pregnant? Not yet. Su Qingsang didn't have time to say. I ate out yesterday and didn't video call my mother. I'll tell her today. Su Chenghui nodded. His lips moved, and he wanted to say something, but he stopped in the end. There was silence again. Su Chenghui picked up the coffee in front of him and took a sip. The black coffee was a little bitter. Qingsang. Yes? Can I come to see you when your child is born? Why not? It was the first time that Su Qingsang had seen Su Chenghui being so cautious. You're their grandfather. Of course, you can visit them. Su Chenghui's expression changed a little because of her words. He lowered his head and felt complicated. I went to see Peijian yesterday. Su Chenghui couldn't help but feel emotional when he thought of his daughter, whom he had doted on for more than 20 years, ending up like that. She didn't want to see me. She didn't want to see me. I had to think of a way to see her. Su Chenghui didn't need Su Qingsang's response. He just wanted to talk to someone. Since when did he not even have someone to talk to by his side? I don't know when it started, but I've been thinking about it. Did I do something wrong? This kind of thinking finally reached its peak after the two of you changed back. I know it's my fault, irreparable, but I didn't know it would bring about such serious consequences. Su Qingsang didn't comment. They were all adults, and it wasn't something that could be explained away by being impulsive. Everyone had to pay the price for their actions, no matter who it was. She looks good. Saying good was just a comforting word. How good could she be in such a place? Qingsang, I've already persuaded her. I want her to serve her sentence well, try to get her sentence reduced, and then come out as soon as possible. Su Qingsang didn't respond. Hopefully. She had never regarded Su Peijian as an enemy. She hadn't in the past, and she wouldn't in the future. As long as she didn't provoke her, even if she wasn't very willing to get along with her like a normal sister, she was willing to live in peace with her. After Su Chenghui finished speaking, he didn't get a response from Su Qingsang. He was a little disappointed. He looked up at Su Qingsang with a somewhat uneasy expression. Qingsang, do you still hate me? No. Su Qingsang had never hated Su Chenghui. Dad, you're thinking too much. I was wrong for so many things in the past. It's only right for you to hate me. Su Qingsang was silent. She couldn't respond to this. Dad, I don't hate you. There was a bit of resentment, a bit of blame, but not hatred. Su Chenghui looked up at her. Her eyes were clear and innocent. He believed that she really didn't hate him. Unfortunately, just because she didn't hate him didn't mean that others didn't hate him. For example, Li Qianxue. But your mother hates me very much. Su Qingsang couldn't respond to this. Li Qianxue hated him as much as she loved him in the past. It was normal for her to hate him. Su Chenghui also seemed to realize that it wasn't appropriate to say this to his daughter. Do you have time tonight? Let's have dinner together? Call Hu Jingyao too? I promised to treat my colleagues to dinner tonight. Su Chenghui looked disappointed. Su Qingsang lowered her head, thought for a moment, and added, They're all colleagues in our department. If you don't mind, why don't you come together? Su Chenghui's eyes lit up. He looked at Su Qingsang in disbelief. Qingsang, Hu Jinyao will come too. My colleagues are all very nice and usually take good care of me. They're all very happy that I'm pregnant this time. That's why I said I'd treat them to dinner. It's my duty. Then will it be inconvenient? No, it's not inconvenient. When Hu Jinyao saw Su Chenghui in the evening, he was a little surprised. He glanced at Su Qingsang, who was greeting her colleagues, into the private room. Everyone in the department had come, and the big table was full. Hu Jinyao, Su Qingsang, and Su Chenghui sat at the top. This was Tang Mohan's family's property, so the environment and dishes were not ordinary. When the others saw Hu Jinyao, they were a little restrained at first, but they soon let go. Hu Jinyao had previous experience, so he didn't drink a drop of wine. Su Chenghui, on the other hand, ate a lot. He toasted every colleague of Su Qingsang, thanking them for taking care of Su Qingsang, and asking them to continue to take care of her in the future. Su Qingsang looked at Su Chenghui's actions and didn't say anything. She just scooped a bowl of soup for Su Chenghui when he sat down. That was a casual gesture. Su Chenghui looked at her, but his eyes were a little hot. The meal was a happy one for both the host and the guest. Hu Jinyao was very sober, but Su Chenghui drank too much. In the end, Hu Jinyao and Su Qingsang sent him back to the hotel. Hu Jinyao held the hairdryer and dried Su Qingsang's hair. Her eyes were half closed, as if she was enjoying his service. Are you tired? No. She didn't move much today. How could she be tired? Why is your dad here today? He came to me in the afternoon and heard about my pregnancy. He asked if I was free to have dinner with him tonight. He said he was going back to Lin City tomorrow, so I called him. Hu Jinyao could guess that was probably the result. I thought you hated him. I don't. She looked at Hu Jinyao in the mirror. Why do you all think I hate him? You don't hate him? Only when you have expectations for a person will you hate him. If you don't have expectations for a person, you won't hate him. Su Qingsang's hair was almost dry. She turned to look at Hu Jinyao. Why does my mother hate my father so much? It's because she always had expectations for my father. She thought that one day she could move my father and make him fall in love with her. That's why she hated him so much when she knew that my father couldn't love her and would only hurt her. But I'm different. Ever since I was a child, I never had expectations for my father. Perhaps there was, but it had been too long. That kind of expectation disappeared without a trace in the end. I always knew that the person he liked the most was Su Peijian, then Yusin. So after I tried a few times, I gave up. I knew that he would never put me in the same position as Su Peijian in his life. I also knew that I would never put him in the position of a father in my life. Because I didn't have expectations, no matter what he did, I wasn't surprised. At most, it's a little uncomfortable. After all, even being treated like that by a stranger would be a little uncomfortable. But it's only a little uncomfortable. Once it's over, it doesn't matter anymore. After all, she didn't care that much about Su Chenghui's thoughts. So, it wasn't about whether she hated him or not. Hu Jinyao didn't say anything. He bent down and gently hugged Su Qingsang, placing his hand on her abdomen. Su Qingsang felt his movements and put her hand on his. It was still flat. Hu Jinyao, I think we will definitely be a very good pair of parents, right? She wouldn't let her children grow up like her. She believed that Hu Jinyao wouldn't let them grow up like he did when he was a child. Of course. Hu Jinyao looked at her attentively, feeling the temperature of her abdomen. We are different from our parents. Yes, we are different from them. Her and Hu Jinyao's children would definitely receive a lot of care and love. Li Qianxue also knew about Su Qingsang's pregnancy. She was so happy that she said she would fly to Rong City to see her. Not only did she come, but Old Master Li and Su Yusin also came. If it weren't for the fact that they still had things to do in Lin City, they would probably still want to live in Rong City until Su Qingsang gave birth. It wasn't easy to convince Li Qianxue to not worry so much. After sending Li Qianxue off, Su Qingsang focused her energy on the examination at the end of the month. This was the disadvantage of being a doctor. Every year, she had to submit papers and take various examinations. She was so busy that she slowly ignored the discomfort in her body. Hu Jinyao was very worried about her, but she refused to rest and insisted on continuing to work. He had no choice but to hire a nutritionist at home and specially told Auntie Yu to follow the nutritionist's instructions. Lu Tongjia and Old Master Hua also came to see them from time to time. But Su Qingsang herself didn't have any awareness of being pregnant at all. She did what she had to do. She didn't skip any outpatient or surgery. Time passed by for another half a month, and Rong City entered September. Su Qingsang's pregnancy had already passed the first 3 months. It was considered stable. Hu Jinyao didn't feel at ease letting her be happy now, even if she repeatedly said that many people still drove until they gave birth. He was the one who drove her to and from work every day. Su Qingsang couldn't argue with him, so she had no choice but to agree. One morning, Su Qingsang went to the bathroom to vomit again. She had been fine for the past month, and there was no sign of vomiting at all. Hu Jinyao thought that the previous time was a coincidence, but in the past few days, he realized that he was overthinking. "Why are you vomiting like this?" Hu Jinyao stood behind Su Qingsang and gently patted her back with one hand. "You were fine for the past month, weren't you?" Su Qingsang didn't speak. She was feeling very uncomfortable and didn't have the time to speak. She actually roughly knew why. When Li Qianxue came to Rong City, she didn't want her to worry. Therefore, she suppressed the thought of vomiting. Later, she was busy with her exams and writing her thesis. She was distracted by foreign affairs, so naturally, her attention was diverted. She had just handed in her thesis yesterday. If there were no accidents, it would probably pass. When one relaxed, the body's reaction naturally came. "I asked Auntie Yu to cook porridge this morning. Can you eat it now?" Ever since Su Qingsang got pregnant, Hu Jinyao had asked Auntie Yu to stay with him. As long as she was at home, he would let her cook 3 meals a day. Su Qingsang nodded. She couldn't not eat. She got up to eat, but just as she picked up the bowl and ate a few mouthfuls, the nausea made her rush to the bathroom again. She vomited even more than before. From that day on, Hu Jinyao realized that Su Qingsang's hard days had come. She almost vomited everything she ate. No matter how bland the food was, she would vomit it after eating it. Hu Jinyao saw this and was extremely anxious. "Why don't we go to the doctor?" Hu Jinyao looked at Su Qingsang, whose face was pale from vomiting. He really didn't know how to stop her from vomiting or make her feel better. Su Qingsang lay in front of the toilet and waved her hand. She was really uncomfortable now. She had reached the point where she could vomit even when drinking water. "Wife?" She had been vomiting like this for a week. In just a few days, she had lost a lot of weight. Not only had she lost weight, but her face had also lost all color. Su Qingsang stood up and supported herself with one hand in front of the bathroom counter. She looked at Hu Jinyao and said in a very weak voice, "Hu Jinyao, I'm a doctor myself. You want me to see a doctor? But how can you do this?" Su Qingsang rinsed her mouth. She didn't expect her morning sickness to be so severe. "Let's eat first. You've already vomited like this. Are you sure you can still eat?" "If I can't eat, I'll force myself to eat. If I really can't, I can only go to the hospital for an infusion." Su Qingsang said it very calmly, but Hu Jinyao felt his heart ache. He never knew that pregnancy was so hard. Previously, Su Qingsang didn't vomit after that day. He thought it was just an occasional occurrence. But this week, he realized that he had rejoiced too early. Su Qingsang returned to the dining table and looked at the dishes on the table. She still had no appetite. "Wife." Seeing her like this, Hu Jinyao wanted to say that he should just give up the child. "It's okay. I'll try again." Su Qingsang picked up the bowl as she spoke. She forced herself to drink the bowl of porridge. Hu Jiniao looked at her nervously. Seeing that she had finished the bowl of porridge, he didn't even have time to breathe a sigh of relief before Su Qingsang stood up again and headed towards the bathroom. This time, Hu Jiniao's face turned green. He followed her to the bathroom and found that Su Qingsang had vomited everything she had just eaten. Hu Jiniao really couldn't calm down now. Wife, Su Qingsang was indeed very uncomfortable. Her instincts shouldn't be something she could control. She wanted to vomit no matter what she smelled. Anything she smelled made her stomach turn. She waved her hand, and her face was extremely pale. She had hardly eaten anything serious for the past week. Hu Jiniao reached out to help her. She didn't refuse. The two of them returned to the sofa in the living room and sat down. Auntie Yu came out of the kitchen and saw Su Qingsang like this. Her heart ached. What should we do? Madam can't eat anything. Why don't I make you some egg custard? Su Qingsang waved her hand. Don't bother. I don't have an appetite. Madam, you can't do this. You're not alone. There are 3 of you. Auntie Yu also knew that Su Qingsang was pregnant with twins. She had been fine for the past half a month, but she had vomited like this in the past few days. Her heart ached when she saw it. Su Qingsang knew, but she really couldn't eat. She looked at the time and didn't go to work today. I'll go back to my room and sleep for a while. You're not eating breakfast. No, I'll vomit it out even if I eat. Su Qingsang didn't expect the child to be so good at tormenting her. She went back to the bed and lay down. Hu Jiniao followed behind her and watched her sleep with a face full of worry. After leaving the room, Hu Jiniao called others one by one. Even if Su Qingsang was a doctor, doctors didn't treat themselves since ancient times. Perhaps she still had to find someone else for her problem. Lu Tongjia came not long after receiving his call. She saw the worry on Hu Jiniao's face. She ran to see Su Qingsang. She was still asleep. After she got pregnant, she was more sleepy than before. Previously, she had to take the exam and write the thesis, so she forced herself to be energetic and busy. Now that she was done, she also relaxed. You haven't eaten properly for a week, and you're only telling me now? Qingsang didn't let me say it. Hu Jiniao was also very helpless. She said she's a doctor. She understands everything. She understands everything. Why doesn't she eat? Lu Tongjia was furious. She couldn't help but raise her hand and pat Hu Jiniao on the shoulder. How did you take care of her? Mom! Hu Jiniao wanted to beg for mercy. When the mother and son talked about Su Qingsang, their tones were equally worried. Unknowingly, there was a little more intimacy. However, Lu Tongjia wasn't a doctor. She came to keep an eye on Su Qingsang and let her eat properly. However, Su Qingsang was destined to let her down. She woke up at noon and sat at the dining table. In front of her stood Hu Jiniao, Ms. Yu, and Lu Tongjia. Su Qingsang, who was being stared at by them, felt great pressure. Looking at the light dishes on the table that Lu Tongjia had personally ordered, she forced herself to eat some. She ate half a bowl of rice and drank a bowl of soup. Hu Jiniao breathed a sigh of relief. It was indeed beneficial to have Lu Tongjia come over. However, his relief only lasted for less than a minute. The moment Su Qingsang put down the bowl, she rushed to the bathroom again. This time, she almost spat out the yellow bile. When she came out of the bathroom, her legs were weak, and she felt indescribably weak. Wife! Qingsang. Madam! Su Qingsang looked at the concerned faces of the people in front of her and smiled bitterly. I'm sorry. I really tried my best. If she couldn't eat, she couldn't eat. If she wanted to vomit, she wanted to vomit. This was really out of her control. Lu Tongjia and Hu Jiniao looked at each other. What should we do? Lu Tongjia was also helpless. Do we really have to go to the hospital for an infusion? You're a doctor yourself. You should know that it's not good for your health. Of course, Su Qingsang knew that. She shook her head and said, No infusion. I'll endure it for a while. I'll eat it later. She was a doctor and knew many ways, such as ginger juice and applesauce. She had tried it 2 days ago. At that time, she could suppress it, but when it was time to eat, she still vomited whatever she ate. In the end, Su Qingsang drank some soup. Because she didn't eat much, she finally didn't vomit anymore. However, she refused to eat again. Hu Jinyao looked anxious. In the evening, Lu Tongjia asked Ms. Yu to make more dishes. With so many dishes, she had to find one that Su Qingsang could eat without vomiting. Right? It was still useless. Hu Jinyao felt that his hair was about to fall out. At night, Su Qingsang had already fallen asleep. However, he couldn't sleep. Looking at Su Qingsang's pale face, he came out of the room and went to the living room. Lu Tongjia didn't sleep either. She couldn't sleep either. Su Qingsang's reaction in the past few days was really worrying. You've only just arrived, and you already have such a big reaction. You have 2 more in your stomach. What will happen if this continues? No matter how much Lu Tongjia didn't like Su Qingsang before, she began to accept her after hearing what her son said. Not to mention that Su Qingsang was pregnant now. Twins. The happier she was before, the more worried she was now. Hu Jinyao sat still. Lu Tongjia didn't like him like this. She patted the back of his hand and said, "Think of a way." What could he think of? He tried his best to coax Su Qingsang to eat every day. But could she blame him for not being able to eat? You're really useless. Lu Tongjia was so angry that she couldn't help but despise her son. I'm useless, but you are. Think of a way. Lu Tongjia cleared her throat and said, "What can I think of? When I gave birth to you, you were much more obedient in my stomach." Hu Jinyao rarely heard Lu Tongjia talk about the past. In fact, Lu Tongjia rarely talked about the past. Now that she talked about it, there was no pain on her face. Instead, there was a hint of nostalgia. When you were in my stomach, you didn't mess with me. You were all very obedient, especially Wu Shuang. From beginning to end, she didn't react at all. After she was born, she was also very obedient and sensible. It was the first time in more than 10 years that Hu Jinyao talked about his brother and sister to Lu Tongjia. Hu Jinyao didn't interrupt her. He listened to her talk about some of the fun things that happened when she was pregnant. Lu Tongjia talked about Hu Jinkai and Hu Wushuang. What about me? Mom, what were you like when you were pregnant with me? You? Lu Tongjia smiled. Her eyes were calm, and she didn't look angry in the past. In the beginning, I felt a little nauseous. Then I got better. At that time, my appetite was also strange. I didn't like food in the past, but at that time I liked it very much. For example, fish and prawns. I used to like them, but at that time I didn't like them anymore. At that time, Aunt Zhou found it difficult to cook. She didn't know what I wanted to eat. After all, I changed my mind every day. Hearing her words, Hu Jinyao suddenly stood up. Mom, I know what to do. Did she say anything just now? Lu Tongjia looked confused. Hu Jinyao glanced at her, grabbed the car keys, and went out. Chapter 6:29. When Su Qingsang got up in the morning, she vomited for a long time as usual. Wife. Hu Jinyao didn't go to work for a few days. Every day he would ask Yang Wenchang to bring work to his house. As soon as Su Qingsang arrived, he got up. How are you? Su Qingsang waved her hand, got up, washed up, and tidied herself up. She was in good spirits this morning. Are you hungry? You haven't eaten well these past few days. Let's go have breakfast, shall we? Su Qingsang didn't even want to hear the word eat, because she really had no desire to eat at all. Honey, maybe you'll like the breakfast today. Let's go. Su Qingsang glanced at him suspiciously. After washing up, she followed him out of the room. There were a few small plates on the dining table and a pot of porridge next to them. A bowl of porridge was placed in front of her. Hu Jinyao gestured for her to sit down. She looked at the breakfast and then at Hu Jinyao. Come, try it. She sat down and picked up her chopsticks. It was a very light bowl of vegetable and shredded pork porridge. The vegetables were finely chopped, the chicken shreds were shredded, and the porridge was cooked until it was soft and smelled very fragrant. She took a sip and surprisingly didn't feel nauseous. That familiar smell gave her a faint guess. Until the bowl of porridge was empty. He didn't feel like vomiting, nor did he feel nauseous. She filled another bowl for herself. Together with the side dishes on the table, there were pickled vegetables and pickled radishes. There are turnips. She ate 2 bowls of porridge in a row and didn't feel nauseous. When she finished the second bowl, her eyes felt a little warm and sour. She blinked her eyes and suppressed the urge to cry. How is it? Huijian looked at her nervously. Is it delicious? It was delicious and very appetizing. She really didn't feel like vomiting anymore. Do you want another bowl? You haven't eaten well these past few days. Su Qingsang didn't object. She ate half a bowl of porridge with the side dishes. Half an hour after the meal, she didn't feel like vomiting again. Huijian let out a long sigh of relief. However, he was still a little worried. Are you going to throw up now? Yes. Su Qingsang nodded heavily. She looked up at Huijian and asked, Where is she? He went to buy groceries. Huijian knew what she was asking, so he said softly, She said she would cook some local dishes for you. Su Qingsang's eyes began to water again. Huijian sat down next to her, took her hand, and wrapped it in his palm. Don't cry. Not good for children. Didn't you say so? Do you need to do prenatal education? Su Qingsang was pregnant, and Huijian always asked her what to pay attention to. He had too many questions. One by one, he thought of another. Su Qingsang didn't know how to answer him. She went to the hospital and found 2 manuals for pregnant women for him to read. Huijian didn't know anything before. Only after reading a book did he know that prenatal education was required when the child was still in the womb. I'm not crying. Su Qingsang sniffled. She just wanted to cry. You told her? Yes. Su Qingsang didn't ask again. She tasted the porridge on the table and knew that it was Xiang Caiping's cooking. At that time in Lin City, she had always made some local specialties for her to eat. At that time, Xiang Caiping thought that she wouldn't like it and was nervous for a long time. Every time she wanted to help her cook, she would ask for her opinion first. Later, when she saw that she wasn't picky and really liked to eat, she slowly let go of her courage. She made more and more. Su Qingsang put down her chopsticks and glanced at Huijian. When did she come? She came early this morning. Huijian went to find Xiang Caiping last night and told her about Su Qingsang's pregnancy. Xiang Caiping was a little surprised that Su Qingsang was pregnant. In the past, she had mentioned it so many times in Lin City, but she didn't see Su Qingsang pregnant. Now that they had nothing to do with each other, she was pregnant. She didn't say anything, nor did she express anything. Huijian had no choice but to tell her the truth. He said that Su Qingsang was pregnant and vomited everything she ate. She had lost a lot of weight and hadn't eaten properly for a few days. At that time, Xiang Caiping only asked him to come back first. He thought that she didn't want to come to see Su Qingsang and didn't want to help. He didn't expect Xiang Caiping to come early this morning. She made those dishes last night and brought them over. She came over early this morning to make the porridge. Su Qingsang looked up at him. Why did you think of looking for her? She had always thought that Huijian didn't want to see Xiang Caiping. It's all because of you. I really have no choice. Su Qingsang vomited everything she ate. He had tried all kinds of methods. She was a doctor herself, but she couldn't cure her morning sickness. When Lu Tongjia mentioned it yesterday, he remembered that when they were in Lin City, Su Qingsang liked to eat Xiang Caiping's dishes very much. She especially liked some of the pickled dishes that Xiang Caiping made. Yesterday, when Lu Tongjia was talking about it, he thought that Su Qingsang was from Lin City. Maybe she wanted to eat the specialties of Lin City? Su Qingsang looked at the back of his wheat-colored hand. The joints were distinct, slender, and strong. Did I make things difficult for you? He also made things difficult for the auntie. It's not difficult. Huijian lifted her hand and kissed her fingertips. As long as it can make you eat, anything is fine. He was serious when he said that. Her reaction in the past week had really scared Huijian. He almost didn't dare to think about what he would do if she continued like this throughout the pregnancy. Su Qingsang smiled and put her face close to Huijian's shoulder. Huijian, thank you. Silly. Why are you thanking me? Hu Jinyao's hand touched her abdomen. It had been 3 months. Maybe because they were twins, he could already feel a slight bulge. When Xiang Kaiping entered the door, she was carrying a large bag of ingredients in her hand. Su Qingsang stood up and looked at her with a complicated expression. Auntie? Yes. Xiang Kaiping responded softly. Auntie, you took the ingredients from her hand. I'll go wash the vegetables first. Xiang Kaiping didn't object. She stood there and looked at Su Qingsang. Because of her pregnancy, her face was a little pale. She hadn't eaten well for a while, and she looked a lot thinner. How are you? Can your body take it? Su Qingsang nodded. She had a good foundation, so naturally, there was nothing she couldn't take. Have you had breakfast? Xiang Kaiping looked in the direction of the dining room as she spoke. Hu Jinyao answered for her. Yes, I ate 2 bowls of porridge. Xiang Kaiping nodded, obviously relieved. It's good that you can eat it. I'll make sour bamboo shoots for you today. And sour beans. How about that? Xiang Kaiping listed a few more dishes, all of which were local dishes in Lin City. In the past, when she was with Su Qingsang, she often cooked for her. Okay. It wasn't that Su Qingsang hadn't thought about eating sour food recently, but every time she ate it, she still felt nauseous and vomited. However, after hearing Xiang Caiping's list of dishes, she didn't feel nauseous at all. Instead, she had quite an appetite. Then you rest first. Xiang Kaiping went to the kitchen, and Su Qingsang wanted to follow her to help, but Xiang Kaiping stopped her. The kitchen is very smoky and greasy. It's better if you don't go. Have a good rest. Eat more at noon to nourish your body. Look at you, you've lost weight. Su Qingsang felt a little sore at the tip of her nose. She nodded heavily and said, Okay. Xiang Kaiping didn't say anything else and went to the kitchen to help. After she left, Su Qingsang reached out and hugged Hu Jinyao, rubbing her face against his chest. Auntie is so nice. Yeah. No matter what, Su Peijian was sent to prison by him. But now that Xiang Kaiping was willing to come, even Hu Jinyao had to admit that he might have been a petty person before. Lu Tongjia went to the old house early in the morning. Originally, she wanted to ask Aunt Zhou to help. However, when she brought Aunt Zhou over, Su Qingsang was already sitting at the dining table. Xiang Kaiping was afraid that she wouldn't be able to eat again, so she made 7 or 8 dishes. They were all light appetizers. They were very homely dishes, but Su Qingsang's appetite was very good. She ate 2 bowls of rice in a row. She didn't vomit after eating, which made everyone else feel relieved. Lu Tongjia didn't know Xiang Kaiping, so she thought that she was a chef hired by Hu Jinyao. Especially at this time, Xiang Kaiping was wearing an apron. Her face, which looked a little old and haggard because of Su Peijian's imprisonment, had not recovered. It was no wonder that Lu Tongjia misunderstood. You're good at cooking. Qingsang likes your dishes so much. You should stay. Xiang Kaiping was stunned. Before she could say anything, Hu Jinyao spoke. Mom. He didn't say anything unnecessary. One look made Lu Tongjia understand that Xiang Caiping's identity might not be ordinary. Mom, you eat first. After eating, we'll go buy some things. Qingsang needs them later. Lu Tongjia understood that her son had something to say to her, so she didn't refuse. Under Su Qingsang's invitation, she sat down and tasted Xiang Caiping's cooking. To be honest, compared to the chef at home, it was really average. However, it was already very good that Su Qingsang was willing to eat it. After eating, Hu Jinyao took Lu Tongjia away under the excuse of buying things and sending Aunt Zhou home. Aunt, you went to clean up the dishes. Su Qingsang looked at Xiang Kaiping and said apologetically, Auntie, am I right? Jinyao's mother didn't do it on purpose. It's okay. Xiang Kaiping had experienced so many things over the years, so she didn't mind this kind of thing. It's not a big deal. The two of them sat on the sofa, facing each other in silence. Xiang Kaiping tried to find something to talk about. I went to see Peijian again last month. Thinking of Su Peijian, she finally looked better. She looks good, better than before. I don't know how she got over it. I heard that she's doing very well in prison. She has the education and the ability. The school in the prison said that she would be a teacher to teach the female prisoners. I think she's much more energetic than before. Really? That's good. To be honest, she knew Su Peijian's ability. After all, she was a person who had been raised by Li Qianxue and Su Chenghui. I think it's good too. She didn't say these things. It was the prison warden who said it. He said that as long as Su Peijian can continue like this, it's not impossible to reduce her sentence. Xiang Kaiping lowered her head and twisted her hands together. Actually, I don't think about reducing her sentence now. I just hope that she can get over it and be good. Don't worry, Auntie. Peijian is a very smart person. She knows what's best for her. I think she will do well and try to reduce her sentence as soon as possible. She looked at Xiang Kaiping in silence. Su Qingsang reached out and held her hand. Her hand was no longer white and delicate. There were already fine lines. She felt a little sorry for her. Annie, thank you. Jin Yao and I didn't take care of you about Peijian. I'm sorry. There's nothing to be sorry about. Xiang Kaiping had also gotten over it. Everyone bears their own responsibility. This is Peijian's own fault. She can't blame anyone else. I've also gotten over it. If she doesn't go in with her stubborn personality, she might do more extreme things. That's good. Is that so? Lu Tongjia heard Hua Jinyao's words and didn't expect that. In that case, Xiang Kaiping is a broad-minded person. Yes. Hua Jinyao nodded. It's a pity that she was unlucky. She had such a daughter. As for Su Chenghui, he was an elder and Su Qingsong's father, so he didn't comment. But if you do this, your mother-in-law will be unhappy, right? Lu Tongjia immediately thought of this. Your mother-in-law has been at odds with Xiang Kaiping for so many years, but now you let Xiang Kaiping take care of Qingsang. Isn't that bad? For example, she takes care of Qingsang on the surface, but secretly, she wasn't being mean. In fact, if she were Xiang Kaiping, she would never want to see Su Qingsang and her husband. Mom, Auntie isn't that kind of person. You may know a person's face, but you don't know her heart. Besides, even if she has good intentions, what if your mother-in-law finds out? Have you ever thought that it might be another conflict? I've thought about it. How could Hua Jin Yao not think about it? I've thought about it. How could Hua Jin Yao not have thought about it? But I have no choice now. You saw it too. In the end, Qingsang treated Auntie differently. Qingsang is willing to eat the food she cooks. I don't have the mood to care about what my mother-in-law thinks now. I just want Qingsang to eat well. That was true. Lu Tongjia still felt that it was inappropriate. Fortunately, Li Qianxue was in Lin City and not in Rong City. If one day she came to see Su Qingsang like she did last time, it would be wonderful. They might bump into each other. Who knew what would happen then? Lu Tongjia didn't have time to worry about what Li Qianxue would think if she found out. At night, she began to realize that something was wrong. During dinner, Xiang Kaiping cooked a few of Lin City's specialties. The dishes were really ordinary, but Su Qingsang loved them. She didn't vomit much that day, and she didn't feel nauseous. In the evening, Xiang Kaiping specially made a hot and sour soup and stir-fried diced meat with the pickled bamboo shoots left over from lunch. Su Qingsang liked the two sour dishes very much. When she sat down, she asked Lu Tongjia and the others to eat together. Jin Yao, eat. Auntie, eat. Auntie, you sit down and eat too. When she called her auntie, Lu Tongjia realized what was going on. Su Qingsang had been calling her auntie for nearly a year because she didn't want to admit her identity before. Now that Xiang Kaiping was here, Su Qingsang also called her auntie. Who knew who she called her auntie? Su Qingsang also realized it. She looked at Xiang Kaiping and said, Auntie Xiang, eat. That was the difference. However, Lu Tongjia's expression wasn't very good. She looked at Su Qingsang and wanted to say something, but she hesitated. In the end, she could only eat in silence. The atmosphere was a little awkward. After dinner, Lu Tongjia was going back to the old house. Su Qingsang could eat now and wouldn't vomit again, so she didn't have to worry so much. Auntie, you're going back? Since she was pregnant, Lu Tongjia had taken good care of her. Su Qingsang glanced at Hu Jinyao and said, "You send Auntie back. No need, there's a driver. Let him stay and take care of you." Lu Tongjia didn't leave immediately after she finished speaking. She stood in the living room and stared at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang felt uncomfortable under her stare and didn't know what she was going to do. Lu Tongjia looked around. Auntie Yu was cleaning up in the kitchen. Xiang Kaiping stayed in the guest room and went back to her room. There were only her, Hu Jinyao, and Su Qingsang in the living room. She cleared her throat, her expression a little serious. "You're already 3 months pregnant. Don't you have to think about some things?" "Think about what? What did she have to think about?" Lu Tongjia suppressed the embarrassment in her eyes and her voice became a little stiff. "The problem of how the child will be called after the child is born. The problem of how the child will be called after the child is born." Su Qingsang didn't quite understand and subconsciously looked at Hu Jinyao. However, Hu Jinyao didn't understand either. Lu Tongjia clenched her fists and released them again, forcing herself to look indifferent. "The child in your stomach is my grandson or granddaughter, right? They're born and call me grandma, but you're still calling me auntie. What do you want others to think?" Su Qingsang blinked and looked at Hu Jinyao again. "Why are you looking at him?" Lu Tongjia's voice was a little cold. "You're going to give me a grandson. Do you still want to call me auntie?" Su Qingsang finally understood what was going on. Her lips moved with a trace of uncertainty. "But, didn't you tell me not to call you mom? Then why did I ask you to divorce Hu Jinyao? Why didn't you say so?" Even Lu Tongjia felt embarrassed after saying that. She glared at Su Qingsang and said, "Stupid. I don't know what Hu Jinyao likes about you." Such a stupid brain was really infuriating. Lu Tongjia turned around angrily and walked away. The expression on her face was not very good. Su Qingsang's expression was a little strange. Her lips moved, and when Lu Tongjia stepped out of the door, she took 2 steps forward. "Mom, take care." Lu Tongjia had 1 foot out of the door. She suddenly heard the word "mom" and almost tripped over the doorsill. She turned around and glared at Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang called her mom the first time, but she was much more comfortable the second time. "It's getting late. Mom, go home and rest early. Don't worry about me. I don't need you to worry about me. You should take care of yourself." After saying that, Lu Tongjia felt that her tone was too harsh. Without looking at Su Qingsang, she said, "Don't always point to others about what you want to eat. Call me and I'll ask someone to make it for you." "Thank you, Mom. I got it." Su Qingsang touched her nose and said, "Don't worry. If I want to eat something, I'll tell Jinyao." Lu Tongjia looked at her with a look of disgust. Stupid. Jinyao was Jinyao and she was herself. How could they be the same? She was really stupid. How could she have such a stupid daughter-in-law? Lu Tongjia left with a look of disgust on her face. After entering the elevator, she thought of Su Qingsang calling her mom and couldn't help but smile. She was smart enough to see the light. She wasn't completely stupid. With a good lesson, she could still be the mistress of the Hua family in the future. Su Qingsang didn't care about the expression on Lu Tongjia's face. After the door closed, she glanced at Hu Jinyao. Her clear eyes had an inexplicable urge to laugh. "Is your mom saying that she doesn't like it?" She said she didn't like it, but she actually accepted it in her heart, right? Hu Jinyao had been watching silently for a long time. Now he burst into laughter. He put his arm around Su Qingsang's waist and leaned over to kiss her on the lips. "Honey, you're amazing." "Of course." Su Qingsang nodded and looked calm. "I'm definitely amazing. If I wasn't, how could I have twins?" "Honey, I think I need to correct you about this." "What? You're pregnant with twins. I'm the amazing one." Hu Jinyao looked serious. "After all, if it weren't for my amazing seed, how could you have twins?" Su Qingsang punched him on the chest. "Hu Jinyao, that's enough. Prenatal education. Don't worry, they don't have ears yet. They can't hear it." Su Qingsang couldn't stand it anymore. "They can't hear it, but I can." She turned to leave. Hu Jinyao hurriedly pulled her back. Are you angry? I'll go see Auntie. The guest room was just cleaned in the afternoon. He didn't know if Xiang Kaiping was used to it. Hu Jiniao looked at her back and thought of what Lu Tongjia said today. Xiang Kaiping came to take care of Su Qingsang with good intentions. But if Li Qianxue found out, it would really cause a storm. No matter what, right now, all his focus was on Su Qingsang. He only hoped that she could be well. Xiang Kaiping officially lived in Hu Jiniao and Su Qingsang's house. Her cooking skills weren't very good, but she put in a lot of effort. Every day, she thought of ways to make delicious food for Su Qingsang. In addition to all kinds of Lin City dishes, she also improved the local dishes of Rong City. In addition to the 3 meals, she and Auntie Yu also studied some snacks. There were all kinds of flavors and ingredients. After asking the dietitian if they were edible, they tasted them and gave them to Su Qingsang. Su Qingsang went back to work after her infertility. Xiang Kaiping was afraid that she would be hungry. He had made a lot of snacks for her to take with her. It was all so strange. Su Qingsang couldn't get used to eating outside at all, but she was quite comfortable eating the food and snacks Xiang Kaiping made. After a week, Su Qingsang's qi and blood finally improved a little under Xiang Kaiping's care. Her face had more color and she had gained a little weight. Su Qingsang video called Li Qianxue every day. Under Hu Jiniao's instructions, she didn't mention a word about Xiang Kaiping. She also knew that this was not a long-term solution, but Li Qianxue's dislike for Xiang Kaiping came from the bottom of her heart. She didn't want Li Qianxue to be unhappy, nor did she want Xiang Kaiping to feel uncomfortable. Fortunately, Xiang Kaiping seemed to have a tacit understanding with Su Qingsang every day. When Su Qingsang video called Li Qianxue, she would go back to her room and stay there. You're tuning in to the Dreamy Chapters YouTube channel. We're so grateful for your support, and don't forget to subscribe to join us on this incredible journey through captivating stories. Your generosity through donations truly makes a world of difference, as it's the primary source of revenue that allows me to expand and enhance this channel for you. Thank you from the bottom of my heart for being a part of this adventure.